Chapter 810. Pfft. Perhaps knowing that he had no way out, Lei Qiuming's eyes were no longer angry. Instead he sneered. I'm stupid? I don't know that although aristocratic families are despicable, they are still more trustworthy than sections. Lei Qiuming shook his head, a hint of desolation appearing on his face. I heard that after Lei Qiushing was usurped by Sky Demon, he did not die. Instead, he hid in the northern frontier. Now, not only has his cultivation improved greatly, he has even entered the Northern Frontier Military Academy as a teacher to teach the art of war. Occasionally, he will also go to the political academy to give lectures. His life is not bad. Speaking to here, he paused, then continued, but his nature will not change. This person, if he meets someone who can suppress him, like the previous emperor of the 10,000 Swords dynasty, then he will be the twin stars of 10,000 Swords. He will be as famous as Yan Xingqi, the god of war who can defeat the Frost Mirror Barbarian and the Qing River Navy. But if he meets a ruler like Xie Xinghai, who has great ambition but little ability, then he will change and become the divine martial emperor, who usurps the throne. Lin Yuan's outstretched right hand paused. This Lei Qiuming was a little interesting. He directly called Lei Qiushing by his name, and not called him Big Brother. A person who did not want to die could find all kinds of excuses to beg for mercy. That Lei Qiushing, who was currently serving the northern frontier, was undoubtedly a breakthrough. If he played this card, even if Lin Yuan would not stop, he would at least care about their relationship and would not kill them all. At the very least, he would leave behind a bloodline inheritance. But Lei Qiuming would rather let Lin Yuan do as he pleased than borrow Lei Qiushing's power. This pair of brothers, there must be a story behind them. At the end of the day, Lei Qiushing is very capable and ambitious. Once he grasps authority, he doesn't want to let it go. Instead, he wants more authority. Unless the person above him is very strong, so strong that he feels despair, and can crush him in every aspect, he will be willing to serve. For someone who values authority so much, have you ever wondered why he would allow me to set up my own little imperial court? For so many years, I've been acting like a country within a country. Do you think he can't see it? That year, when the army was mobilized, he sent out a surprise attack on the Wanjian imperial capital. He ordered me to lead the main force to continue the advance, but we ran into the Fallen Star army at their peak. One group wanted to usurp the throne. The other group wanted to enter the capital to rescue the emperor. When these two groups met, it was bound to be a life and death situation. Lei Qiushing and I share the same mother. Since we were young, our food and clothing were ordinary, and our skills were ordinary. Although he was slightly stronger than me, it wasn't by much. You know, there is only one dragon throne. So from then on, he wanted to get rid of me. But at that time, I didn't understand this point. Because I didn't want to be the emperor. Or rather, I didn't think that we would be the ones to win. After all, the Jiao imperial family is not a soft persimmon. They dared to raise Lei Qiushing and Yan Xingqi, these two fierce tigers, and let them lead an army each. Their foundation can be imagined. If it wasn't for Jiao Xinghai's ambition but lack of talent, and losing the inheritance, wealth, and reputation that the Jiao imperial family's ancestors left for their descendants, even if Lei Qiushing and Yan Xingqi joined hands, they might not be able to gain any advantage. At that time, I still treated him as my blood brother. When he told me that he wanted to rebel, I didn't even think about it and agreed. I didn't think that things would go smoother than I expected. It can be seen that Lei Qiushing had made a lot of arrangements in those years. The only variable was Yan Xingqi, a man who was called the god of war together with Lei Qiushing. When I faced Yan Xingqi, he didn't show any strange emotions. It was obvious that he had a card up his sleeve. It was as if getting rid of Yan Xingqi was as easy as getting rid of the soldiers we had dealt with along the way. However, not long after that, I found out that I was wrong, very wrong. Because the elite troops that Lei Qiushing brought with him were the most loyal troops that he had personally trained. They were also the elites of the entire army. They were the only troops that could fight against the Falling Star army. Although there were a lot of soldiers and generals left in my hands, the elites, even if I had 10 times more soldiers and horses than Yan Xingqi, I could only delay them for 5 days. When I saw my soldiers and generals being cut down by them like harvesting wheat, Lei Qiuming paused again. His eyes became a little bitter. He said sternly, I finally understood. My good brother wanted to use Yan Xingqi's hand to get rid of me, the threat. Lin Yuan's eyes changed slightly. When the cunning rabbit is killed, the hound is cooked. Such stories, in his eyes, were not few in number in history. Almost every emperor who founded a country had done such things. As a result, the 4 words, achievements that shake the ruler, had become a sharp blade that hung over the heads of countless good ministers and generals since ancient times. Want to serve the country and show your ambition? You can, but you have to be careful. When you make everyone praise you instead of praising the emperor, then your time of death will come. It might even be the kind of death where your whole family will be wiped out. Since ancient times, it was true that being with the emperor was like being with a tiger. But Lin Yuan had never thought that a person could be so heartless. Since ancient times, there were many examples of people who did not have family ties. But most of them were brothers fighting for the throne. But who would directly kill his own brother when he might not even be able to become the emperor? Until I was defeated and captured, I only had this thought. After all, when death is near, it is inevitable to have some resentment, isn't it? Lei Qiuming's eyes were filled with anger. Lei Qiuming's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he hissed. But Yan Xingqi didn't kill me. He only tied me to the back of a horse and dragged me all the way to the outskirts of the imperial capital. He wanted Lei Qiuxing to open the city gates and surrender, otherwise he would kill me in front of everyone. But Lei Qiuxing hid in the city and didn't show himself. I was then stripped naked by Yan Xingqi and hung on a flagpole for 3 days under the scorching sun. Is that so? Lin Yuan's voice seemed to have a hint of sadness. On the night my cultivation foundation was destroyed, even Yan Xingqi was disappointed in Lei Qiuxing. He planned to kill me the next day and then attack the city with all his strength. But in the end, Lei Qiuxing suddenly attacked at night and caught Yan Xingqi and the Fallen Star Army off guard. With one battle, the Jiao royal family, the Fallen Star Army and me were all eliminated. I survived, but it was no different from being dead. Lei Qiuxing conferred me the title of King of the Green Earth, and turned a blind eye to all my actions. It wasn't because he couldn't see, but because he knew that I wasn't a threat to him. The earth energy in my body was disappearing little by little. My cultivation base was getting lower and lower. Under such circumstances, I did not even dare to recruit a strong follower. I was afraid that someone would take over my place. How could I be a threat to Lei Qiuxing? Lei Qiuming opened his mouth and laughed out loud. Gnashing his teeth, he said, I hate it. Chapter 8:11. Winner takes all. Lin Yuan's gaze was still as calm as an ancient well. Do you really think that the sects in the south were supported by me? In the north, there was the Hengduan mountain range, and the Shuangjian barbarians suppressing the local forces. Lei Qiuxing didn't need to worry about it. In the central plains, he was personally overseeing it. In the imperial court, although the aristocratic families and sects were coexisting, under his methods, both sides didn't get along. In addition, there were the families of generals and nobles around him. The imperial court of the Xinwu dynasty was under his control. But what about the south? Although the situation in the south wasn't as bad as the north, there were many forests and rivers. Not only was there a lot of demon beasts, there were even more experts in the forest than in the north. Because of the developed waterways, the cities were prosperous, and the business of the dark side was even more numerous. Under such a disaster, no one would be able to raise their heads. Do you think Lei Qiuxing can see it? Of course he can. Why doesn't he care? Because these are all problems that he deliberately left for me. If I can unify the south under the condition that my cultivation is half crippled, go to the north and take revenge for the old and new grudges that have accumulated over these years, then I can be considered as having the ability to be a better emperor than him. Lei Qiuming wiped away the sweat and tears on his forehead and said with a bitter smile, I'm not saying this to ask for a way out. I'm just telling you what kind of poisonous snake you've been raising by your side. Under Lei Qiuming's gaze, Lin Yuan stepped forward and pressed one hand on Lei Qiuming's head. The vital energy in his body surged, directly shattering Lei Qiuming's meridians and bones. Then he turned and walked towards the rain outside the door. Lei Qiuming maintained his kneeling position, and looked up at Lin Yuan's back. He smiled and said, "In my life, I could be considered an extremely powerful official with great power. After the Wanjian dynasty was destroyed, there wasn't a single day that I was happy. I still..." Lei Qiuming didn't finish his words. The last trace of life had been extinguished. After confirming that the wound was completely healed, Lin Yuan stepped into the rain. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. He was not willing to raise a poisonous snake by his side, especially one like Lei Qiusheng, a poisonous snake with true ability. If it was someone like Jiu Wuying, whose ambition was greater than his ability, Lin Yuan could still manage one or two things. But Lei Qiusheng, a character like Chao Mingde, was not someone that anyone could manage. He couldn't possibly change Lei Qiusheng's blood, could he? This guy wasn't undeserving of his punishment. He really dared to drag him down with him. However, since he was entrusted with the task, he had to be loyal to it. The war god of the northern frontier, who was as famous as Lei Qiusheng, was willing to die for the northern frontier because he had asked Lin Yuan for a favor. Don't kill Lei Qiusheng. Like him, he would be trapped in the northern frontier for the rest of his life, slowly suppressing the rising killing intent in his heart. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth curled up slightly. His mind turned, and he sensed that in this inescapable net, there was a sorry figure that had been forced into a dead end by Tao Tai. With a tap of his foot, his figure arrived in an instant. Black Jiao, what kind of demonic technique did you use? Why can't I get out? As soon as he saw Lin Yuan appear, Zhen Renhe's eyes immediately turned blood red. This curtain of rain was even stranger than he thought. No matter how fast he was, he couldn't rush out of the area covered by the curtain of rain. It was like there was an invisible wall blocking here. Even if he used all his strength, it was like a clay ox entering the sea, instantly disappearing into nothingness. Such a method. He had never heard of it before. I am a demon. What's wrong with knowing one or two demonic techniques? Lin Yuan grinned at Zhen Renhe and said in a cold voice, "But I didn't come to listen to you question me, nor to see how you die. I have a question for you. It's up to you whether you answer or not, but I will only give you this one chance. If I answer your question, will you not kill me?" Zhen Renhe's expression changed, and he asked expectantly. After cultivating to the Kongming realm, it was reasonable to say that he was already standing at the top of the cultivation world. Even if he joined those first-class forces, he would at least have the position of an elder. If he joined some imperial court, he would directly enjoy endless glory, splendor, and wealth. It was ridiculous that he had made a mistake. He didn't expect that this Black Jiao would really dare to come to his door and commit murder. If he could live, who would be willing to die? You cultivated demonic techniques. Regardless of whether you harmed humans or demons, you have interfered with the 6 paths of reincarnation. This is a serious crime, and your punishment is to have your body and soul destroyed. Even those formidable guardians of the heavenly gate might not dare to say anything. How do you have the face to ask me to let you live? Lin Yuan crossed his arms and asked with a cold smile. Listen to the question carefully. Who created the protective array of your Mount Cloud Crane? Don't tell me it's you. You're just at the Kongming realm, so you naturally can't do it. Also, don't tell me it was left behind by a predecessor. The Cloud Crane Monastery only has a history of over 20 years, and this great array was built no more than 5 years ago. Since I can break the array, you can't lie to me. These words were purely a bluff. Lin Yuan naturally didn't know anything about arrays. He could only break the array by relying on the system's cheating. However, there were also people who were good at arrays in the Northern Frontier's Ministry of Works. Every great array needed a corresponding arrangement. For example, the demonic array of Mount Cloud Crane, which was connected to the spirit vein, was still fine. At the very least, there was no need to fill it with spirit stones or manually inject spirit chi every time the great array was activated. However, the other array tools and array patterns all needed to be repaired and replaced. Just like the teleportation arrays in the Endless Sea, they were gradually used less or even stopped because ordinary sea demon clans didn't have the means to maintain them. If perfected, he didn't have the means to repair or maintain the Great Array. He wouldn't be able to activate this Great Array at all. At least in this world, There was no magical array that could be set up and run for millions of years. Even if there was, it was brought over from the primeval world. Perfected, he wasn't even a guardian of the heavenly gate, let alone being related to the ancient demon court. Since you're not willing to let me go, do you expect me to answer your question? Perfected, his expression turned gloomy as he asked in a bad mood. As a person who cultivated demonic arts, Perfected, he most likely didn't have a bottom line. Therefore, when the opportunity to betray others in exchange for his own survival was placed in front of him, he definitely wouldn't hesitate. Unless that person was someone he couldn't afford to offend, and Lin Yuan definitely couldn't afford to offend him either. That was why he chose to play dumb. However, Lin Yuan was like this. Even if he wanted to cooperate, he couldn't find a reason to convince himself. A mere void netherworld realm? Has your true body reached the desolate demon realm? How could this black flood dragon's tone be so arrogant to this extent? Since you're not willing to answer me, then forget it. Lin Yuan spread out his hands indifferently and said with a cold smile. Remember, you chose to have your body and soul destroyed. Chapter 8:12. When did I choose to have my body and soul destroyed? Spiritual master, he roared. He knew very well that he was no match for the Taotai. He did not even have the ability to kidnap Lin Yuan in front of the Taotai. He was able to restrain the Taotai because of the second evil formation in the temple. Even a cultivator of the Tao initiation realm would be seriously injured if they stepped into that formation unprepared. However, the Taotai only swayed a few times and withstood it. He only became more irritable. This kind of expert was not someone he could deal with. Therefore, after the second evil array was broken by Lin Yuan outside by some unknown means, he decisively gave up the idea of fighting Taotai head-on. Even when he saw Lin Yuan when he went out, he didn't dare to waste time attacking or looting. He could only grit his teeth and escape into the distance. But who would have thought that this reign would be so strange? The problem was, if he died, he would die. But to have his body and soul destroyed was too much. If his body died, he could still take over the body of a living person. Although he would have to pay a big price, he could at least live. Lin Yuan's face turned cold. He said in a deep voice, I said before that you cultivated an evil method and refined the souls of living beings into elixirs to assist your cultivation. You interfered with the 6 paths of reincarnation. With such a serious crime, you deserve to have your body and soul destroyed. Even if you find the guardians of the gate of heaven, do you think they will dare to object? Although the Tianwu world was not a complete world, it was most likely not a fragment of the Eldritch world. That was because the visitors from the Eldritch world had entered through the gate of heaven. They did not exist when the world was born. Coupled with the self-will of this incomplete world, it could even fight with his cheat, the incomplete origin of the heavenly way. The will of a world was not that strong. At least, it had to wait until the world was complete before it could evolve into the heavenly way. It could give birth to its own intelligence and follow the supreme rules, to make rules for cultivators to follow. After the green leaf water lotus grew, the wild beasts born from the soil and water dared to provoke him, a demonic beast. That was not in accordance with the rules of nature. The will of a world was a lower existence than the heavenly way. It was wrong to provoke the heavenly way. Not to mention that the origin of the heavenly way had been at a disadvantage several times in a row. Therefore, this world should have been born on its own. If the heavenly Tao was born in the future, it would be an existence that could stand on equal footing with the complete great desolate world's heavenly Tao. Although this world was not complete, the will of the world had still been born, and the rules were eternal. Those great cultivators with top-notch cultivation would definitely receive guidance from the will of the world, and know what they could and could not do, just like how they had joined hands to guard the heavenly gates. It might not be voluntary, but they had to do it. Something like perfected his interference with the 6 realms of reincarnation was undoubtedly a taboo. The guardians of the heavenly gate either did not know about this rule, or were too lazy to care about other people's business. However, Lin Yuan, the future Netherworld king, was involved in this matter. If he was not given a proper outcome, he would be punished by the heavens. What was heavenly punishment? Before Hongjun took control of the heavenly Tao, The heavenly punishment was a tribulation. Only after overcoming it could one live forever. After Hongjun took control of the heavenly Tao, the upper limit of cultivators became lower. The heavenly punishment was also changed to lightning tribulation by him. However, there was no Hongjun in this world. Lin Yuan dared to say that he might not be unable to withstand the lightning tribulation, but he did not dare to say that he could withstand the tribulation. Lin Yuan calmly took a few steps back and pulled a safe distance away from Perfected He. He was afraid that this old thing would not be able to accept it and would suddenly attack him. He had finally fulfilled Guan Zhaoshan's long-cherished wish. If he died in the hands of this old thing, wouldn't all his previous efforts be in vain? After pulling a distance away, Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and said, "I'll ask and you'll answer. Consider it atonement for your crimes. I can even let you die a good death. At least after you've endured the punishment of the netherworld, you can reincarnate and return to the world." Concepts like the 6 realms of reincarnation and the netherworld clearly did not exist in this world. However, the punishment of having one's body and soul destroyed did indeed exist. It was the cruelest punishment in the world. Perfected He, who was on good terms with the guardians of the heavenly gate, did not have enough cultivation. However, he was half a step into the real cultivation world. He still had some understanding of this secret that was not feared. Ling Yunzi is the Grand Supreme Elder of the Heavenly Justice sect. This array was created by him. Perfected He's expression changed, and he immediately exclaimed in a low voice. Death was not scary. For practitioners who had many tricks up their sleeves, they could take over another body and cultivate again. Even if they really died in a disaster, as long as they left behind a bit of their true spirit, they could arrange an evil situation like the Fire Kirin to be reborn. Furthermore, from examples like the Fire Kirin and Yangqing Lin, there were not many such existences, but they were definitely not few. Even if they did not have such methods, it did not matter. After all, this world did not have the Netherworld King, nor did it have the existence of the Netherworld God. After death, one's soul would still be taken by the heavenly axiom, and would not become a demon that appeared due to various mistakes. However, when they were sent into the cycle of reincarnation, it was hard to guarantee that there would be some mistakes. This would allow them to be reborn with the innate wisdom and the memories of their previous lives. The truly scary thing was to die completely. This kind of death that did not even have the right to reincarnate was enough to defeat any existence that claimed that they were not afraid of death. D. Contact with the information of the person who set up the evil array. Mission progress updated, mission progress updated, mission changing, mission name. Enforce Heaven's Will description. Now that you have further information about the evil array, please go to Heaven's Will and look for Ling Yunzi. No matter what method you use, get more information about the evil array from him. Mission reward depends on the degree of completion. Punishment for failure, none. The system once again displayed 3 question marks, which made Lin Yuan feel flustered and exasperated. The big boss of the system had not even issued a mission, but someone else had issued a mission right in front of him, and even modified it. How should he put it? Did it not care about its reputation? The corner of Lin Yuan's mouth twitched slightly as well. Good heavens, is this guy addicted to white girls? Although he did not find the person who set up the array and kill him, at least he participated in this chain mission, and successfully completed the first stage of the mission. You should at least give me some rewards. D. The first stage of the mission has been detected to be completed. Reward: 5,000 points of incense power. Following another system notification, Lin Yuan's merit panel jumped quickly, and 5,000 points were added. All the expenses of using the skills during this period, including the heavenly downpour, were all reimbursed. Is she able to hear my thoughts? The boss is generous. The boss is a million women. Is scumbag behavior. Now that the system could also hear Lin Yuan's thoughts, it once again displayed a question mark. Chapter 8:13. Lin Yuan just shrugged his shoulders at the system's harsh reprimand. Look at how others are looking at you. Aren't you ashamed at all? What's in those lectures that you gave? Look at the first mission that other people gave out. The first stage of the mission was 5,000 incense power. The system ignored Lin Yuan. Obviously, it was very angry with Lin Yuan. It now felt that it could even raise a horse on its head. The system big boss, the origin of the primitive heavenly Tao, was cuckolded. Young people don't talk about martial ethics. To be honest, how much was the reward of 5,000 incense power? In fact, it was not much. It could also take it out without any pressure. But when Lin Yuan ate this kind of reward, it must be a wave of wealth. It did not conform to the training plan of each stage. Moreover, this dog only needed to bribe Lin Yuan. At most, he would have to add the Celestial Emperor, who might not be born yet. But it was different. It had more than 9,000 hosts under its command. There was no comparison at all, okay? The will of the other worlds was also not so unethical. How could it be the same thing to train the chosen one and poach from the hands of a peer? He's yours. Enjoy to your heart's content, from the body to the soul. Eat clean. Lin Yuan reached out and patted Tao Tai on the shoulder, then patted the oil paper umbrella hanging behind him, and said with a smile, "When you finish eating the things here, let me know, and I will remove the rain here." As his voice fell, Lin Yuan took a step and passed through the rain, disappearing from Jinrenhe's sight. He was very busy and did not have time to waste here. Black Jiao, you don't talk about morality, you don't keep your word, you… Jinrenhe's scream spread far and wide. At the same time, northern frontier Donglin City. Li Zhong and Luo Su sat opposite each other. Both of their faces were expressionless, but the air was filled with a chill. Li Zhong put the cup in his hand on the table and said slowly, "Yin Xingqi is dead, the front line is broken, and the Blackwater army left by the Dragon King is almost completely wiped out. This matter. Don't you plan to give me an explanation? After all, you are the mastermind of the death plan and also the executor. What's there to explain? Isn't it all within our expectations?" Luo Su smiled. His bandaged hands were still holding the cup, and he carefully blew on the hot tea. "It's indeed within our expectations, but the problem is that you didn't report the modification of the death plan to lure and kill the Sky Demon. You chose to carry it out without our consent. In the beginning, the benefits were not small. What's strange is that only a small part of your 4 groups ran into the Sky Demon. Even Zhao Guangchong, who was in a certain death situation, was chased by the Sky Demon for a while on the way back after burning the grain stockade. After that, the Sky Demon who was chasing them disappeared without a trace. Li Zhong's face was still expressionless, but his body was filled with murderous intent. He said in a cold voice, "Shouldn't Commander Luo give me an explanation for this matter?" There was a smile in Luo Su's eyes, but he just shook his head and didn't say anything. He naturally knew that Lin Yuan had the devil army in his hands. After all, the high-ranking officials in the embroidered uniform guards were also trained by Lin Yuan. He naturally knew about the existence of these classmates. However, this matter was one of the top-secret files. Without Lin Yuan's approval, he had the right to not reveal it to anyone. "Okay," I asked out of curiosity. "It's up to you whether you want to tell me or not. However, you can't avoid the other 2 matters." Li Zhong's eyes were cold. He slammed the table and said, "The Blackwater army was almost destroyed, not because of the front line, but because their retreat was blocked. There was no hope of returning to the northern frontier, so they could only grit their teeth and fight back to the front line camp. That's why this tragedy happened. In addition, the death of Lin Yin from the association of the Demon Emperor was very strange. He was clearly reporting that he didn't encounter the Sky Demon, but suddenly there was no news. When he was found again, he was already a corpse. What's so strange about that?" Luo Su pointed at his own head and said indifferently, "I'm also a human, not a god. I don't know how to arrange everything. Even if they are unlucky, you can push the responsibility to me?" "Li Zhong, what do you mean?" Li Zhong laughed coldly. His face became gloomy. He raised his eyebrows and said, "What do I mean? The Blackwater army was blocked by the Sky Demon, and I have nothing to say. At most, it's your negligence. However, about Lin Yin, don't tell me that when the Sky Demon had the chance to capture someone alive, he would still choose to kill him. As for Zhao Guangchong, he went to a dead end. If not for the strange situation, he would have died. Therefore, according to your original arrangement, only you are safe. With this situation in front of me, it's hard for me not to suspect that this was not your arrangement. Luo. Do. The last 3 words were roared out by Li Zhong through gritted teeth. Obviously, he was on the verge of exploding in anger. Internal strife was actually not uncommon in the northern frontier. After all, there were many factions, and it was normal for them to cause trouble for each other. However, at this juncture, the northern frontier was already short of manpower. If there was still internal strife, it would be too much. Moreover, no matter how one looked at it, it seemed that Luo Su had bribed the Sky Demon to exchange the lives of these people for his own safety. Moreover, he had made the first move to gain the upper hand. He had directly killed Lin Yin, who was going to be one of his opponents, who would be in charge of the Association of the Demon Emperor in the future. It was not hard to understand. Although Lin Yuan had played the role of Lin Yin in the beginning, now that there was a Lin Yin in the northern frontier to manage the Association of the Demon Emperor, in Luo Su's eyes, it was inevitably another Sherdong. Luo Su calmly took a sip of tea, then frowned and said, "This tea is a little bad. I'm afraid it doesn't suit your status as the king of the northern frontier. Come to my place later, and let me have a chance to bribe my boss." "What do you mean?" Li Zhong's face grew gloomier. "Nothing." Luo Su put down his cup and said indifferently, "If I say that I'm innocent, you definitely won't believe me. However, if you can find evidence, I should be on death row now, and not here watching you hit the table. Therefore, you will definitely continue to investigate this matter. If you find out that I'm innocent in the end, you and I will have a knot in our hearts. Therefore, you clearly don't like me. Therefore, I will try to please you so that you won't have such strong doubts about me next time. Isn't that normal?" At this point, Luo Su stood up, bent slightly, and looked down at Li Zhong. He said coldly, "What? Zhang Xiuzhu can give you gifts, but I can't? Is it because my things are dirty, or did you want to deal with me all along? Accepting Zhang Xiuzhu's gifts was just a show for the Dragon King?" Chapter 8:14. After saying this, Luo Su stood up straight again and sneered. "In the short term, there shouldn't be a large-scale war here, so I plan to go back and rest for a few days. You can investigate slowly, and see if you can find evidence of me colluding with the Sky Demon. I have high hopes for you, King of the Northern Frontier, ha 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 ha." When he said the words King of the Northern Frontier, Luo Su also emphasized them, as if to remind Li Zhong of something. But after saying this, Luo Su laughed and walked out, not giving Li Zhong any face at all. The rules of the Northern Frontier were right there. In name, the embroidered uniform guards were the King of the Northern Frontier's personal guards and eyes and ears. In reality, the embroidered uniform guards were directly responsible for Lin Yuan. The confidential files sent to Li Zhong were all things that Li Zhong could see with his authority. The two were actually of the same level. So Li Zhong could raise suspicions about Luo Su and start investigating. He could ask Luo Su not to interfere with any official business during this time, but he could not use any means of arrest or torture on Luo Su unless he had solid evidence in his hands. When Luo Su gave him face, he called him King of the Northern Frontier. When he didn't give him face, it was like now. And he had no way at all, especially when he emphasized the words King of the Northern Frontier. It was clearly to remind him that the one who had the final say in the Northern Frontier was not the King of the Northern Frontier. Unless the news of Lin Yuan's death came back, Li Zhong should first consider the fate of the two seniors before making any moves. Luo Su. Li Zhong's face was gloomy as he gritted his teeth and shouted this name. He was not surprised that Luo Su could find out that he had received a gift from Zhang Xiuzhu. This was because he had not concealed it from the beginning. He had called Luo Su here today not to help Zhang Xiuzhu, but because this matter had been strange from beginning to end. Except for Zhao Guangcheng's group, who had somehow managed to survive, all the other groups involved in this matter had not ended well. Especially Zhao Guangcheng's group, who had died without knowing why. If the Sky Demon had the chance to capture humans alive, he would definitely capture them and then use hunger, pain, and other means to constantly eliminate their will, and turn them into a body for the Sky Demon to possess. He would never simply kill them. Moreover, among the corpses found, there was not a single person missing from that group. This clearly did not seem to be the work of the Sky Demon. Of course, it could not be ruled out that the Sky Demon or the Northern Restoration Society had deliberately set up a trap to make him and Luo Su turn against each other. That was why he had asked Luo Su to come and ask about this matter. However, he did not expect that Luo Su would not give him any face at all, and would directly flip the table. There must be something fishy about this matter. Li Zhong reached out and touched his chin, murmuring, "I just don't know if this is the Dragon King's spy or Luo Su's fishing in troubled waters." At the same time, the smile on Luo Su's face gradually disappeared as he walked out of the conference room. He walked expressionlessly through the crowd on the street. When he passed by a dark alley, Luo Su's figure turned and disappeared without a trace. The eyes of the two Yi Busho who were responsible for keeping watch widened as they hurriedly rushed into the alley. On the other side, Lin Yuan, who had already arrived outside Jilu City, raised his eyebrows slightly and murmured, "It can't be. The two Yi Busho members have been cut off from me. Now that the Wei River is holding back almost 80% of the Northern Frontier's forces, the Shuangjin barbarian won't invade the border at this time, right?" The Yi Busho members had either stayed in the hinterland of the Northern Frontier to take over the work of Yi Busho, who had a large number of people transferred away, or stayed near the Frost Mirror grassland to guard against the movements of the Shuangjin dynasty. If two of them suddenly died, it was most likely because the rangers stationed at the edge of the Frost Mirror grassland had a conflict with the Frost Mirror barbarian. Although this kind of thing was not common, it was still considered a small conflict that could be directly ignored. No, that's not right. The Northern Frontier was now at war with the Sky Demon. Not only had the Frost Mirror Empire and the Qing River Empire avoided a disaster, but who would dare to find trouble with the Northern Frontier at this time? It was already a mistake for them not to help the Northern Frontier, but they still wanted to stab them in the back at this time. Weren't they trying to see if the Heavenly Gate Guardians still had the strength to kill them after killing the Xinwu dynasty? Lin Yuan's eyebrows were tightly knitted together. For a moment, he could not understand why such a thing had suddenly happened. It was true that he was now active behind the Heavenly Demons, but it was impossible for the Heavenly Demons to be active behind him. Originally, the rules had been set before that the chaos of the Heavenly Demons would be firmly confined to the territory of the Xinwu dynasty, and they would be allowed to fight with Lin Yuan. Firstly, they wanted to weigh the weight of Lin Yuan, the descendant of the demon court, and secondly, they wanted to find time to solve other matters first. However, if things were really messed up, it would be a slap in the face to the guardian of the Elysium. Could it be? With a thought, Lin Yuan's expression became gloomy. He suddenly remembered the conversation he had with Li Guhong on Mount Cloud Crane. The Heavenly Gate Guardians had made their move so quickly? Have a cup of tea? Suddenly a voice sounded. It was neither loud nor soft, but it instantly suppressed the surrounding noise and entered Lin Yuan's ears. Lin Yuan suddenly turned his head and saw a pale-faced young man with long hair that was half black and half white. At this moment he was dressed in linen clothes and was busy standing behind a simple and crude small tea stall. This kind of small tea stall was not uncommon near the city gate. After all, the city was not a place where one could enter or leave as one wished. The Northern Frontier did this well, but it was only okay. After all, there were not many cultivators in this world, and if any one of them had bad intentions, they could bring about great destruction. It was not something that could be detected by security checks. Could it be that you would not even allow people to enter the city gate just because they were cultivators? Therefore, the Northern Frontier did not seem to have any thresholds or checks, but as long as a stranger entered the Northern Frontier, they would basically be in contact with the Demon Arch Association. There were also embroidered uniform guards secretly watching over them. It did not matter if they had bad intentions, but as long as they put it into practice, they would probably be secretly subdued before they could even get close to their target. And now, even the fate of the Xinwu dynasty had been sold out by Lei Qiusheng. Naturally, the various policies were also corrupted. Entering the city had been turned into a situation where one was molesting an innocent woman and asking for bribes. For example, even if one really wanted to destroy the city, as long as one could pay the entrance tax, one could directly enter. Of course, if one really could not pay, the city gate order would not stop one from entering. However, it would definitely be handled according to the rules. It was like checking one's household register. After checking all the information, one would be allowed to enter one by one. For those who were queuing behind, it was simply a form of torture. Other than the western gate that was specially for nobles, the other 3 city gates were all like this. Chapter 8:15. But even so, there was still a long queue to enter the city. After all, this was not the northern frontier. Although there were various products in the villages and towns, they had to pay taxes and support the aristocratic families. If they did not enter the city to make some extra money, these villages and towns would starve to death. Tyranny was fiercer than a tiger. These words had not appeared only once or twice in the history of the previous life. Just like many policies that benefited the country, and the people later became the sharp blade that the aristocratic families used to fill their private pockets. Even if the royal family wanted to intervene, the aristocratic families would cry and beg the Confucian scholars to scold the royal family, and say something like competing with the people for benefits. They did not care whether the national treasury was enough, whether the people's livelihood could be maintained, or whether the country was about to collapse. There were people like Zhang Juzheng, who risked their lives to continue the reform of the country. There were also scums like the 6 gentlemen of Donglin who did evil in the Ming dynasty, and went to the Qing dynasty to seek official positions after the fall of the Ming dynasty. A country with a royal family could be destroyed because of these policies, these officials, and these aristocratic families, let alone the Shenwu dynasty that had lost Lei Qiusheng. Everyone knew that this was wrong, but no one could stand out to change it. Even if someone stood out, it would be useless. After all, the fate of the Shenwu dynasty had been sold by Lei Qiusheng. Even if it could prolong its life, it could not save a corpse that had begun to stiffen. However, these people were used to being bullied. Although the world was difficult, they could still survive. After all, they were not without hope. Since a series of reforms in the northern frontier were implemented, many people in the nearby Shuangjian and Qinjiang wanted to move to the northern frontier, let alone the Shenwu dynasty. So they only needed to survive and wait for Lin Yuan to lead the army to the south and give them a good life. Therefore, this kind of small tea stall near the city gate came into being. It was impossible to line up for half a day without even drinking water. That would definitely cause trouble. In addition, this kind of tea stall only boiled some hot water and some rough tea leaves that only had a bitter taste. Therefore, the price was cheap and the business was not bad. However, except for Lin Yuan, no one knew that the young man behind the tea stall was at least a supreme master. With a thought, he could easily wipe Zhilu City off the map of the south. Of course, except for those who already knew his identity, no one would think that the young man who ran around and talked with some hooligans was actually a powerful cultivator. Why are you here? Lin Yuan silently left the team, sat gently in front of the small tea stall, and asked softly. Kong Lezin chuckled and pushed a cup of strong tea in front of Lin Yuan. He said jokingly, "Why else would I come to this small southern city? It's because what you did and said before has crossed some people's bottom line. They even joined hands to prepare a sky-high reward for your head." So, Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly, a cold light surging in his eyes. He had crossed the line? Back then, those people thought that they were stronger than him, and took away a lot of profits just by opening their mouths. After that, they did not report to him at all. Instead, they treated him like a henchman, and directly threw the mess of the heavenly demons to the northern region to deal with. It was obvious that they were not satisfied with him, and wanted more profits. Now that he was strong enough, he wanted to kick some people out. Could it be his fault? So now there are some people who overestimate themselves and are hiding in the dark, ready to make trouble. I came this time to help you get rid of a batch. Kong Lezin's smile faded and a trace of darkness flashed in his eyes. He said coldly, "A bunch of old things. They can't even see the changes in the world, and still refuse to admit that they should withdraw from the stage. Some people, and I mean that you have done a good job, but we hope that you can go even further. The more people who rebel, the better. It's good that we can eliminate all the forces under their hands in one go. so that they don't have any ideas that they shouldn't have. And then when I'm no longer useful, I'll be eaten by you? Lin Yuan drank the hot tea in front of him in one gulp. He frowned slightly and said, "You're giving people hot tea on such a hot day? If ordinary hawkers did business like you, they would sell their pants in 2 days. Isn't it good to let them suffer a little? I told them to drink tea. Do they dare to refuse?" Kong Lezin sat opposite Lin Yuan, and there was no change in his eyes. He said indifferently, "I don't deny that you are indeed a big piece of fat meat. Everyone wants to take a bite of you, but as far as I know, no one wants to be the first one to take a bite of you. Of course, the first one to take a bite of you can have a mouthful of oil, but no one knows whether your meat is poisonous or not. So as long as you can poison everyone who opens their mouth, the rest of the people will have to stay away from you no matter how much they want to eat you. Thank you for your advice. I'll be leaving first." Lin Yuan nodded slightly. He turned his right hand and placed 2 coins on the tea stall. Kong Lezin took a deep breath after seeing Lin Yuan's receding figure. He glanced at the scorching sun above his head before slowly standing up and murmuring, "It's late, time to clean up." With that, 6 copper coins flew out from Kong Lezin's sleeves and expanded in the wind, instantly enveloping the entire Zhilu city. Suddenly, the world changed. It was as though the entire Zhilu city had turned into a chessboard. Everyone was frozen on the spot. Their actions, expressions were all frozen. It was as though someone had pressed the pause button while watching a movie. In the next moment, some people were burned to ashes by flames that came out of nowhere. Some people were covered in white frost and shattered into icicles all over the ground. Some people cracked inch by inch and were sucked into the endless darkness. There were also some people who rapidly aged from their youthful appearances and directly turned into withered skeletons. Then their skeletons rotted and turned into fine powder, disappearing without a trace with a gentle breeze. After about 4 to 5 breaths, the 6 coins returned to Kong Lezin's sleeve. The frozen scene began to play again. However, no one noticed that hundreds of people were missing in the city. Even if someone noticed this, they only dared to shrink on the spot and shiver with intense fear in their eyes. As their trembling legs strode forward, streams of light flew out of Zhilu City and disappeared into the horizon. The cultivators who were at least in the Heaven Star realm and in the Void realm didn't dare to stay in Zhilu City for even a second, as if they had encountered a great terror. "I hope I made the right bet this time." Kong Lezin let out a long breath. When the crowd in front of him suddenly called out, "Boss, serve tea," he laughed and said, "It's here. Today is New Year's Eve. 5 consecutive updates. Qing Feng wishes everyone a happy new year, and all your wishes come true." Chapter 816. An hour later at Red Dust Inn in Zhilu City. Long. Vice President Guan. The shopkeeper, who was reading a biography behind the counter, stood up to greet Lin Yuan when he saw him enter. It was also this sentence that caused everyone sitting in the lobby of the Red Dust Inn to look at Lin Yuan. "Miss Guan, all 318 heroes of my Ganyu Island have come together to support you." The first one to speak was Zhao Deyong, who was drinking with a few strong men. "Yes." Lin Yuan nodded slightly as a greeting. He looked around at the faces of everyone in the lobby, then turned his head to look at the shopkeeper. He narrowed his eyes and said, "Is there anyone who didn't give me face and didn't come?" There were men and women, old and young in the hall, but every one of them had a cultivation base and was famous in the underworld. Even the inconspicuous people sitting in the corner had dozens of people under them. If all the people in this small hall were to gather together, they could form an army of 700,000 to 800,000 people in the blink of an eye. As for whether or not these people were willing to come, and whether or not they would listen to him, it had nothing to do with him. He was the one giving orders, and those who disobeyed him would naturally be dealt with by others. What he was even more curious about was whether there would still be people who would not give him face and openly disagree with him, directly expressing that they would not be coming. Such a good chicken. It would be a pity if he didn't kill it to warn the monkeys. The shopkeeper pondered for a moment, and under the gaze of a group of Greenwood cultivators he said, "No one dares to directly say that they don't want to listen to you. but there are a few who went overboard. For example, the Thunderbolt Hall said that their hall master is still in seclusion and only sent an outer member. There's also Lajian village. Although the village master agreed, according to the time, he should have arrived in Julu City. However, according to the news from the branch, this village master hasn't left yet. And then, after listening to the list of names, Lin Yuan's gaze swept across the faces of the crowd again, but he found that these people did not look surprised at all. Obviously, they already knew that there were so many people who did not give them face and were unwilling to come. Furthermore, most of them were not willing to come. It was only because they were afraid of revenge that they had no choice but to come. Furthermore, Guan Zhaoshan was currently in the limelight and had the backing of the Ether Association. If not a single one of the Lulin influences turned up for the first time he had convened a meeting, it would be too much of a slap to the Ether Association's face. You're giving me face by coming here. Thank you. Lin Yuan bowed slightly to the forest cultivators in the hall. When he straightened his body, his eyes were dark and cold. He lowered his voice and said, "In the Jianghu, to put it nicely, you are righteous, but to put it bluntly, you gave me some face this time and let the matter pass. Next time, I will give you some face. You and me, no one should make things difficult for the other, right?" As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of laughter rang out in the hall, but no one refuted Lin Yuan's words. After all, wasn't this the case in Jianghu? Who was on good terms with whom? It was just that the benefits were not there, and it was not worth it for both sides to kill each other. Did you all hear the name list just now? Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly and said with a cold smile, "If they don't give me face, I won't give them face either. From now on, I will kill all the influences on the name list. No one will be left alive." Why should I? The one who spoke this time was the outer member of Thunderbolt Hall. After all, he was also on the name list. At this moment, he was frightened by Lin Yuan's cold smile, and subconsciously wanted to ask for some support to give himself some courage. Lin Yuan tapped his foot, and came to the other party's side. He placed his white right hand on the other party's shoulder and said with a smile, "For example, Thunderbolt Hall. Since they said that their leader is in seclusion and sent this person here, I can say that Thunderbolt Hall is insulting me. But if that's the case, wouldn't it be too overbearing? What if Thunderbolt Hall thinks that this lad can represent the entire Thunderbolt Hall when their leader is not out? Is she thinking of? Interesting." The rest of the Lulin cultivators' eyes lit up, and they started whispering. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth rose. He reached out and patted the other party's shoulder twice. "So, I think that there is no need for your hall master to come out. From today onwards, you are the hall master of Thunderbolt Hall. Do you have any objections?" The outer member of Thunderbolt Hall's expression changed. He wanted to deny it on the spot, but seemed to have thought of something. He looked at the wolf-like eyes around him and said with a smile, "I think so too." He did not have a good impression of Thunderbolt Hall. After all, Thunderbolt Hall did not take Lin Yuan seriously this time. They sent him, an outer member, to humiliate Lin Yuan, which was equivalent to pushing him to his death. The most infuriating thing was that they were not even willing to pay for the relocation fee, and sent him to attend the meeting. He did not know if they were treating him as a fool, or the legendary Guan Zhaoshan as a fool. Ha ha ha. Lin Yuan laughed and patted the other party's shoulder harder. Then his expression turned serious. He formed a knife hand with his right hand, and performed a few moves of the Thousand Mountain Blade technique. He said in a deep voice, "Thunderbolt Hall is not difficult to deal with. Even without the Ether Association, the Red Dust Society can easily destroy them. However, I have always believed that it is better to share the wealth than to take it all alone. No matter how much wealth one can reap, one cannot reap all the benefits, right? May I ask what is the meaning of this, Vice President Guan?" A middle-aged man carrying a 9-foot-long blade stood up, and looked at Lin Yuan's right hand with a fervent gaze. His resolute face showed that he wanted to continue. "It's the blade demon Li Wenxin from Stellar Sky City. Was Vice President Guan practicing a blade technique? Yes, it must be something good to make Li Wenxin lose his composure." Some of the Greenwood cultivators began to whisper. After all, The battle that had made Li Wenxin famous was because he coveted the inheritance of a certain saber sect. Thus, he had single-handedly slaughtered the entire saber sect. He had abandoned all the treasures, secret techniques, and divine abilities, but had taken away all the saber sect's manuals. Therefore, something that could make Li Wenxin lose his composure was most likely a saber technique, and it was definitely not something ordinary. This blade is called the Thousand Mountain. It is a preliminary creation of mine, and has yet to be graded. However, even if it is just a blade technique, it can reach the Heaven Star level. It is also accompanied by the blade nurturing technique. It uses one's qi and blood to nurture the blade. The more qi and blood there is, the stronger it will be. Lin Yuan turned his gaze and said with a smile, "Consider it one of the rewards." Chapter 8:17. One of the rewards? As soon as the voice fell, everyone's eyes fell on Lin Yuan, and their eyes flashed with brilliance. "I don't think I owe anyone anything. When I was hunted down by the Flying Star sect, the Red Dust Society protected me. Now I'm returning the favor. So, I have no reason to be stingy when I ask for your help this time, right?" The smile on Lin Yuan's face didn't diminish at all as he said, "I'll get someone to make a bounty list for that list. The head of a mortal evolution state can be exchanged for 1 point. The head of an airborne state can be exchanged for 5 points. The head of a heavenly gang state can be exchanged for 10 points. And the head of a void state can be exchanged for 100 points. You can work together or do it alone. Afterward, you can ask for any reward based on the points. As long as you have enough points, I have everything you want." He paused and added, "Also, after these forces are annihilated, everything you get will belong to you. The Red Dust Society won't take a single cent." As soon as he said that, the eyes of all the cultivators in the hall turned green. They were like hungry wolves in the dark. The set of swordsmanship demonstrated by Lin Yuan before could enter Li Wenxin's eyes. It was already impossible for it to be an ordinary swordsmanship. In addition, with such a record of destroying the Cloud Crane Temple, no swordsman would give up. Plus, all the spoils would belong to them after annihilating the enemy. With the Red Dust Society as the new leader of the Forest Society behind them, no one would be able to find fault with it. Some of the representatives of the Forest Society, who already had enough resources, but didn't have an excuse to expand their territory, were already showing their killing intent. They were just waiting to go out and do something big. "I'm Qing Sword, a solo cultivator. Greetings, Boss Guan." A young scholar in a cyan robe stood up and said in a deep voice. Just now, Boss Guan demonstrated a blade art that caused the blade demon to exclaim in surprise. However, this art is of no benefit to us. May I ask if Boss Guan has any other advanced martial arts related to weapons other than the blade art? Azure Frost Sword wasn't a name, it was also a nickname. He and Blade Demon Li Wenxin were both rogue cultivators, but for a lone cultivator like him to be able to gather together with the representatives of various forest powers, it was enough to prove that their individual strength wasn't the slightest bit inferior to some third-rate forest powers. Yes. Lin Yuan nodded slightly, and his hand gesture changed again. In an instant, countless sword shadows, spear auras, fist auras appeared in the entire inn. Under the consumption of a large amount of incense, Lin Yuan's various martial arts, cultivation methods, and even rare treasures had reached a terrifying number. In the entire Sky Martial continent, there was probably no power that could compare to Lin Yuan in this aspect. After all, he had the system behind him, as well as more than 9,000 hosts from various worlds. As long as the power of incense was in place, no matter who came, they would be crippled. "We'll set off now." The group of Greenwood cultivators whistled out, each one faster than the last. Were there many Lulin powers that didn't give Lin Yuan any face? Many. But the problem was that there were even more Lulin powers that gave face to Lin Yuan. In a situation where there were too many wolves and too little meat, coupled with the fact that these Lulin cultivators usually licked the blood from their blades, seeing such a big piece of meat in front of them, how could they just lick it and be done with it? After waiting for the Lulin cultivators to disperse, the shopkeeper walked to Lin Yuan's side. Vice President Guan's boldness in spending so much money, this little one admires it very much, But isn't this matter a little too hasty? Those powers don't like the feeling of having someone above them. And it's not something that can be changed in a day or two. On the contrary, Vice President Guan's actions will easily cause those busybodies of Jianghu to spread rumors, saying that you're unbearably cruel, and that you want to exterminate an entire family just to save face. Lin Yuan's lips curled up slightly, and he said with a smile, "If someone dares to say that, it means that I'm not cruel enough. Otherwise, if I lent them the guts, would they dare to name me and spread rumors? Furthermore, why do I have to gain a good reputation in the eyes of a bunch of dead people?" Yes, this little one spoke too much. The shopkeeper nodded slightly, and retreated to the side. How is the batch of immortal seedlings selected by Taoist Hongchen? Lin Yuan changed the topic and asked. The shopkeeper was slightly startled, and he replied, "Those immortal seedlings are the bloodline of the old man of the god sculpting sect, and they can be said to be of good blood, and there's no possibility of betrayal. They should have already boarded the ship, and are planning to take a detour north from the Azure River Empire, and head to the Northern Frontier Academy to study. Please take care of them in the future." Of course. Lin Yuan nodded in response, and then waved his hand casually, and walked up to the guest room upstairs. After unifying the Lulin forces, it was time to make a move on the demon sect. If it weren't for the Lulin forces that didn't give him face, Lin Yuan might have to spend a lot of effort to persuade these Lulin forces to die. But now, these people who dared to defy him were about to face the tragedy of annihilation. After the war, not only would they be able to eat a mouthful of oil, but they would also get a lot of benefits from Lin Yuan. Even if they knew that the demon sect wasn't easy to deal with, these Lulin forces didn't have the guts to defy him. However, although the demon sect wasn't strong, and they had the help of other organizations, it was only a matter of time before they were destroyed. Lin Yuan only added fuel to the fire, and the process was accelerated. But if the demon sect was destroyed, and the Sky Demon side lost a lot of bodies in the northern frontier, it was inevitable that they would go south again, and wipe out the resistance forces here. First-rate forces and above were still alive, but the weak forces would have a hard time surviving. Especially these Lulin forces, who were hated by everyone and hated by ghosts. It was impossible for any major force to protect them, and they would definitely become the Sky Demon's main target. Therefore, in Lin Yuan's eyes, these people were always dead people, including the Red Dust Society. It was impossible for Lin Yuan to take out another soul-sculpting mantra, but he definitely had other cultivation methods of the same level. Under Lin Yuan's instructions, the Red Dust Society selected a group of people with good aptitudes who hadn't officially chosen a cultivation method, and were only in the foundation establishment stage, to go to the northern frontier to learn a new cultivation method. The rest of the Red Dust Society's members were nothing more than chess pieces in this big game. Whether they could survive or not, it all depended on whether their lives were tough enough. But with the Ether Association's protection, their vitality would definitely be damaged, but they wouldn't be destroyed, which was obviously much better than the other Lulin forces. Taoist Red Dust didn't have any objections to Lin Yuan's plan. From his personal point of view, as long as he could see the hope of the Red Dust Society rising again, and that their upper limit wouldn't be stuck at the half-step void realm, and that they could still exist in the Sky Martial continent in the future, that was the last wish of this old man. For this, even if he had to pay the price with his life, he wouldn't hesitate. Taoist Red Dust's thoughts were the same as those of the God Sculpting sect's remnant bloodline. Chapter 8:18. 2 days later, more than half of the members of Thunderbolt Hall were killed, and an ordinary peripheral member became the Hall Master. 3 days later, Lajian Village and Bloodclothed Tower were all killed. 5 days later, Catching Tiger Village, Haifengshai, and Drifting Cloud Pavilion were all killed. 7 days later, 8 days later, news that shocked the entire dark world in the south spread out one after another. Even some cultivators who were hiding in the mountains could not help but look in the direction of Zhulu City. How could things change so suddenly? Now everyone knew that Guan Zhaoshan, the vice president of Red Dust Society, was not an easy person to deal with. Flying Stars sect and the Imperial Court of the South worked together to exterminate the Guan family, but they were destroyed by Guan Zhaoshan and Red Dust Society. Lei Qiuming hid in the mysterious Taoist temple of Immortal He, but Guan Zhaoshan found him and smashed his skull. Since then, Immortal He's whereabouts were unknown. Some said that his cultivation was destroyed and he retired, while others said that this big shot in the south had died. Not long after that, Guan Zhaoshan sent out invitations in the name of Red Dust Society, summoning all the famous forces and rogue cultivators in the south to Jilu City. Well, no one knew what happened that day. They only knew that after that day, all the forces who received the invitations, but did not go, were killed except for Thunderbolt Hall, which had changed its banner. What was even more frightening was that a Lulin cultivator who had received a hero's invitation, but did not attend the meeting, and instead held a ceremony to wash his hands in a golden basin. Not only did he not succeed in withdrawing from Jianghu, but his entire family was killed the next day. Even his infant was not spared. Some people scolded Guan Zhaoshan for being cruel and tyrannical. Not long after, he was mysteriously found dead in his home. The local government turned a blind eye to it. At night, the corpse disappeared. It was only discovered at dawn. The corpse was hung above the city gate and exposed to the sun for 3 days before it was thrown into the mass grave by the city gate order. The whole south was in a state of panic, but no one dared to say anything bad about Guan Zhaoshan. Lin Yuan could only twitch the corner of his mouth when he heard these rumors. Logically speaking, if it were him, he would definitely not do such a thing, let alone give such an order to his subordinates. Such a tragedy happened because he overestimated human nature. Or rather, he misjudged that these scum and villains who were rolling around in the dark world still had some humanity left in them. No matter what, there was a great reshuffling of the powers in the southern forest. Countless old powers had withered and weakened, and countless new powers had risen. The Jianghu had always been like this. No matter how dirty it was, it could never be completely wiped out. Lin Yuan suddenly remembered the martial arts novels he had read in his previous life. Love and hatred, chivalry and justice, and the elimination of violence were the main plot lines. But who could see the filthiness of the real Jianghu from the writings of those authors? At most, the readers would discover that a certain righteous character was actually a hypocrite. Let's not talk about the less famous ones. As for the more famous ones, let's just talk about the famous 5 greats of the Central Plains. The Eastern heretic, Huang Yaoshi, seemed otherworldly, but who would have thought that the water bandits of Lake Tai were actually his disciples? The Western poison, Ouyang Feng, lived far away in the desert. Which one of the treasures in the White Camel Mountain Villa had not been robbed by the bandits? Even the Northern Beggar clan, who had taught Guojing, who was a hero for the country and the people, had scattered all over the Central Plains. They had never stopped doing things like kidnapping and even human trafficking. Similar things had not completely disappeared in Lin Yuan's previous life. The Jianghu was desirable, but it was also full of filthiness. Even if some people were heroic in their actions, behind those people's generosity and praise, there was a darkness that made people think about it carefully. It's time to set the rules. Lin Yuan reached out and rubbed his eyebrows. There was an undisguised coldness in his heterochromatic eyes. He didn't mind being an evil person, and he didn't mind having his hands covered in blood. But just like when he set up the new rules of the northern frontier, there had to be a bottom line when doing things. Otherwise, when the world fell into chaos, no one would end up well. As a result, the second hero's invitation was issued from the Red Dust Tavern in Jilu City. It quickly fell into the hands of various forest forces. This time, no one dared to disobey Lin Yuan. Almost as soon as they received the invitation, they had already set out in person or sent important members to Jilu City to attend the meeting. The 25th day, Lin Yuan took a deep breath. After washing up, he came to the lobby of the Red Dust Tavern. This time, the forest cultivators who had gathered were no longer as discontent and unruly as last time. They all respectfully bowed to Lin Yuan before sitting down again. Even the whispers gradually disappeared. Today, I have called everyone here for 2 matters. Lin Yuan cleared his throat. His gaze was cold as he said in a cold voice. Everyone is used to being in Jianghu. You should know the principle of not leaving a line for others. But the previous task, everyone really was ruthless. As his voice fell, Many of the forest forces representatives silently lowered their heads, not daring to look directly at Lin Yuan. After all, Lin Yuan had set the rules before. The more heads they cut off, the more benefits they would receive in the end, especially those martial arts techniques and cultivation methods. For these Jianghu loose cultivators, it was a fatal attraction. After all, they rarely came from sects or aristocratic families. In the northern frontier, the cultivation methods and martial arts techniques they cultivated were all superficial. Usually it was fine to bully the weak. Even if they fought with other Jianghu people, they wouldn't be at a disadvantage. But if they encountered someone whose cultivation methods and martial arts techniques were not low, even if their cultivation was the same, they would definitely lose. Under such circumstances, of course, they would cut off as many heads as they could. They wouldn't accept surrenders at all. In fact, this was still considered good. There were even some extremely vicious people who, seeing that they didn't have enough heads, suddenly became bold and attacked innocent cultivators. They had thought that Guan Laoda, who threatened to wipe out sects at the slightest provocation, wouldn't care. But they didn't expect that it would make him so angry that he even singled them out. In an instant, many people felt a chill on their necks. This scene, they had seen it before. He couldn't possibly become the next batch of targets to be hunted before he could even enjoy the benefits, right? You don't have to be afraid. The responsibility for this is mine. I overestimated you. So today, I will set a rule for you. If you work for me, 2 will be killed and 2 will die. Listen well. Abducting children die. Kidnapping women die. Cultivators of evil arts die. Peddlers of epidemic food die. Lin Yuan's hands were behind his back. His eyes swept across the faces of everyone, and he said loudly, "Other than these 4 rules, I can't be bothered to care about anything else. But remember one thing, don't go too far. If anyone dares to play any tricks to eliminate the roots and harm the innocent, don't blame me for not warning you." Chapter 8:19. Hiss. As soon as he finished speaking, the group of greenwood cultivators sucked in a breath of cold air. What was the most profitable business in the Lulin industry? Abducting children. Whether it was to sell them to those who couldn't bear children, or to aristocratic families or sects as slaves, it was a business that could earn them a lot of money. Moreover, this business didn't even require any cultivation level. It could be said that the threshold was extremely low. Abducting women was also something that some Lulin cultivators loved to do. What could a girl like about a Lulin cultivator? Hence, when they met someone they liked, they would simply abduct her and let their brothers have a good time. When they got tired of her, they could even sell her to the brothel to earn some money. Otherwise, would there really be so many pitiful women in the world who couldn't survive and had to be reduced to prostitution? Guan Zhaoshan's words would cut off a lot of people's livelihood. I know many of you want to say that if you don't do these things, many people won't be able to make a living, right? Lin Yuan suddenly laughed with cold killing intent. He said coldly, "We're all cultivators. Why do we have to use such despicable means to earn money and resources? If you're so useless that you'll starve to death if you don't do these things, then why should I keep you alive?" As soon as he said that, some Lulin cultivators who wanted to speak kept quiet out of fear. Oh my, I almost forgot. Although this man said that he was benevolent, he was actually someone who would annihilate a sect at the slightest provocation. Seeing that no one refuted him, Lin Yuan's gaze turned and landed on a beggar wearing tattered clothes. He said coldly, "Quanhai gang of Zhulu City, a total of 62 people, 2 cultivators. The gang leader's cultivation level is at the late stage of the flight evasion realm, and the vice leader's cultivation level is at the peak stage of the mortal evolution realm. These 2 heads will be worth 6 points, and the other 20 points. As for the remaining 60 members, each head will be worth 5 points. Quan Hai Gang was considered one of the weaker powers in Zhulu City. Usually, they would steal, break locks, and mainly abduct children and abduct women. Originally, they didn't have the right to accept Lin Yuan's invitation, but since he wanted to set the rules, they had to kill the chicken to show the monkey. Hence, the result was set. There's a reward for this? The Thunderbolt Hall's new hall master's expression changed as he exclaimed. Lin Yuan smiled and nodded. He said in a deep voice. From now on, the 2 kills and 2 deaths I mentioned will be rewarded. As long as anyone breaks my rules, the reward will be doubled. Even if they don't have a cultivation base, each person will get 50%. As soon as he finished speaking, a saber gleam flashed in the hall. A large human head soared into the sky. The attacker was none other than Blade Demon Li Wenxin. Many Greenwood cultivators who were eager to try paused in their actions, their faces full of annoyance. In just a short moment, they had lost 20 points. Even if these 20 points were not enough to exchange for divine weapons, cultivation methods, or books, they would be enough to use for a long time if they were exchanged for medicinal pills or spiritual items. There are plenty of evildoers. Many of you have done similar things. I've just set the rules today, so I won't settle the score with you. But after today, if anyone breaks the rules again, don't blame the other brothers for bringing your heads to me for points. Lin Yuan's beautiful face had a smile on it. It should have been a pleasing scene, but it sent chills down the Greenwood cultivators' spines. Alright, let's talk about the second matter. Lin Yuan pulled a chair over and sat down. He said indifferently, recently, the south has been very unstable. Large cities like Zhilu City are fine, but in some remote towns and even villages near towns, demon sect members have appeared to spread their teachings. They have tempted ordinary people to join their sect, fought against the southern cultivation world and the government, and used various methods such as blood sacrifices to raise their cultivation base. What do you think about this? Suddenly, most people remembered Lin Yuan's rule of 2 kills and 2 deaths. There was a rule against demon sect members. In an instant, everyone's expression became unnatural. How could they fight the demon sect with just a few of them? Wasn't that just courting death? Lin Yuan took in everyone's reaction. He said again, "Look at your expressions. It's as if your parents have died. I did ask you to fight the demon sect, but do you think I'm harming you? Bullshit. If anyone says I'm harming you, get out now. Bite yourself to death and stay far away. Don't drag others down with you." "Guan Laoda, what do you mean?" Qing Shuang asked again. His expression was very serious, as if he had thought of something. "Haha, you've all worked for me and taken a lot of benefits from me. I don't care about these things, but think about it. Do you think you don't care? Think about it. Won't those sects and aristocratic families want a share of the profits? They don't have the guts to cause trouble for me. After all, I have the Ether Association behind me. With the Flying Star sect as an example, even first-rate sects have to give me some leeway if they don't have a death grudge. What about you? What's your background? It's a fact that you've all committed crimes, isn't it? If those sects and aristocratic families want the things in your hands, they can kill you with a word of doing good deeds. When the time comes, they'll steal your things and kill your people. They'll even be praised for killing you, won't they?" Lin Yuan's smile faded. He continued, "If I say I'm saving you, you can choose not to do it. I won't cause trouble for you. But if they can't cause trouble for you, then it has nothing to do with me." This, Qing Shuang's expression darkened. He sat down again, as if he was thinking about something. They knew very well how shameless the aristocratic families and sects could be. Jianghu was indeed a dark place, but those aristocratic families and sects might not be any cleaner than Jianghu. There were even some sects with vile records who acted in the dark. Perhaps even the devil sect would look like a righteous sect. However, they had a good reputation. The Greenwood cultivators would rob ordinary people or loose cultivators, while the Greenwood cultivators would rob them. Not only would the benefits fall into their pockets, they would also have the reputation of upholding justice, eliminating violence and bringing peace to the people. There were many conflicts between the two sides. There were even large-scale battles. It was just that the Greenwood cultivators were often the ones who suffered losses. Since you're working for me, you're my people. No matter how bold those sects and aristocratic families are, they won't dare to stop you from getting rid of the demon sect or attack you directly. Moreover, once you've done good deeds, your reputation will naturally improve. If those fellows want to touch you again, they won't be able to do so without a good excuse, right?" Lin Yuan tilted his head and said with a faint smile, "That's all I have to say. Everyone disperse." However, if anyone wants to use my name to deter those who have designs on you and still refuse to do anything, then don't blame me for sending you onto the rankings. Chapter 820. The forest cultivators had always been at the bottom of the food chain in the cultivation world. Even though they were all arrogant, the cultivation methods they cultivated were even inferior to the cultivation methods cultivated by the servants of second-rate sects and aristocratic families. They could bully ordinary people or unrated forces, but when the disciples of second-rate and first-rate forces went down the mountain to train, they were nothing more than small fries that would be used to draw blood. After all, most of the forest cultivators had ordinary aptitudes and did not have the qualifications to enter the sects or aristocratic families. They also looked down on the masters of low-level sects and aristocratic families. Their aptitudes were good, but their temperaments were unruly, and they had committed monstrous crimes. These people wandered in the so-called Jianghu. Most of the methods they cultivated were not profound. Even if they had, they were passed down from their ancestors like the Red Dust Society. However, due to various reasons, they were incomplete and difficult to cultivate. Some of them were ancient books of methods obtained from exploring the places where ancient cultivators had passed away. It was hard to say how high the upper limit of such methods were. However, in the absence of guidance, unless one had heaven-defying aptitude, it would be difficult to cultivate any kung fu. Therefore, when Lin Yuan took out cultivation methods and martial skills as a reward, these forest cultivators went crazy. The difference between cultivation methods and cultivation methods was not as simple as the name. The cultivators of this world were like Lin Yuan's previous world, saying that they had meridians in their bodies, but in fact it was just the cultivation method's route. If one dissected the human body, they would not be able to find these meridians. Each cultivation method's route was different, and after cultivating it, the strength and weakness would also be different. According to the most authoritative statistics of the Sky Martial Continent, the human body had about 108 meridians. The original soul sculpting secret art belonged to the category of cultivation methods that could circulate all 108 meridians in a single cycle. Generally, the secret techniques of the sects would have at most 24 to 36 meridians. But if the cultivation methods of the Greenwood cultivators could reach 18 meridians, they would be considered quite powerful. For example, the Red Dust scripture, which was a degraded version of the soul sculpting art, could only reach 30 meridians at most. Only those who had thoroughly comprehended the Red Dust scripture would be able to find these 30 meridians and ensure that they wouldn't suffer from chi deviation or crush their meridians and become a cripple. The cultivation techniques that Lin Yuan had spread out recently were techniques that could take care of at least 30 meridians. It was already much better than most second-rate factions, so it was inevitable that some people would be jealous. However, Lin Yuan still had the Ether Association behind him, so no one dared to go against him and offend Lin Yuan. In addition, I will be going into seclusion to comprehend cultivation methods. I don't know when I will come out, but during this time, you can still come to the Red Dust Inn to exchange for rewards. In addition, I have already asked the Ether Association to greet the various sects and have refined a batch of special tokens. If there are any sects looking for trouble with you, show them this token. If they refuse to leave, just crush the token, and you will be able to summon the experts of the Ether Association to assist you in battle. However, these tokens have a time limit and will automatically be destroyed after a month. At that time, you can calculate the time and come to Deer Chasing City to exchange for the next token. Each token costs 5 points, so it's not expensive. Lin Yuan tossed a black token made of some unknown material into Li Wenxin's hand, his tone indifferent. The group of Greenwood cultivators felt a slight bitterness in their mouths. Those who were quick-witted could already see that they had fallen into a trap when they sought out Lin Yuan to exchange for various benefits. Back then, they had coveted these items, and now, those clans and sects were coveting them. Once they lost the protection of the Ether Association, there was no doubt that they would end up in a miserable state. 5 points to ensure 1 month's safety was indeed not expensive. However, the problem was that they had earned a lot of points previously, so naturally, they had spent a lot of points as well. Even if they did not have enough points to exchange for other cultivation methods and martial techniques, it would still be good to exchange for spiritual items, elixirs, and demonic beast flesh to aid in their cultivation. Who would have thought that Lin Yuan would play such a trick on them? Now, whoever did not help Lin Yuan would become a ghost under the blades of those clans and sections. Among the 2 dead and 2 kills, there were not many pushovers who could be bullied. Once they were done with these pushovers, they would have no choice but to deal with the demonic sect. After sending away the group of Lulin cultivators, the smile on Lin Yuan's face faded. His figure flickered a few times, and he had already come to the underground shelter of a safe house. He lay on a stone bed with a calm face, silently began to operate his martial arts, and fell into a deep sleep. This was a cultivation method from another world, created by Patriarch Chen Tuan. It was called the Sleeping Immortal Technique. Although it was not some profound cultivation method, and could not allow a cultivator's cultivation to improve greatly, it could allow the human body to wait in a state of extremely low energy consumption. The spiritual energy absorbed by the body was about the same as the consumption. Even if one slept for 100 years, one would not starve to death or die of thirst. A moment later, Lin Yuan's eyes flashed, and his consciousness descended upon his actual body. The layout in the south was almost complete. Once the Greenwood forces worked together with the various sects and clans to defeat the demonic sect, it would be time for the Sky Demon to give up on gnawing on tough bones in the north and turn to have a life-and-death battle with the cultivation world in the south. He only needed to observe the changes and reap the benefits. The cultivation time given by the system was almost up. In another 2 days, it would be time to officially deal with the great old ones. You're back. Just as he turned and walked out of the inner hall, he saw Cyrus coming up to him with a solemn expression and greeting him. During this period of time, Cyrus had been dealing with the puppet body controlled by Lin Yuan's divine telekinesis. However, it did not see the puppet body today. Instead, it saw Lin Yuan's actual body. Although it did not understand the key points, it quickly realized that something big was going to happen soon. Lin Yuan nodded slightly. He closed his eyes and read the experience of his spiritual clone during this period of time. After a while, he exhaled a turbid breath. There was a faint smile in his eyes as he said, "Not bad, the overall progress is faster than I thought. In less than half a month, Wuxia Sea area will be completely transformed into a city of commerce, and it can officially start business." Cyrus's expression changed slightly, and it said in a low voice, "Dragon King, there's something I have to say. I didn't know you had a teleportation formation, but now, isn't it a little too risky for you to set up the teleportation point in the center of the city of trade? Of course, the customers can have a good experience, but wouldn't those who have bad intentions directly cross the outer line of defense and attack our vital points? Why don't we move this teleportation point to the periphery of the Willowstone Sea before it's settled? This is to prevent those with ill intentions from causing trouble." Chapter 8:21. Why should I change it? Lin Yuan smirked and pointed at the city gate with his tail. "Our main force is at the city wall. Even if the city is attacked, it won't affect the defense there. Moreover, the teleportation point in the city is one way. They can only come and not leave. The teleportation point to leave is set outside the city. In other words, if they want to leave, not only will they have to defeat our defense, they will also have to find a way to activate the teleportation points outside. Otherwise, they won't be able to escape." "You mean to say that this arrangement of yours is for—" Cyrus's eyes suddenly became strange. It seemed that it still couldn't understand the deeper meaning of Lin Yuan's plan. There are indeed a lot of strong warriors in the Endless Sea. However, compared to the treacherous human beings, they are still much weaker. As long as they have the ability to defeat the guards we have arranged outside, they will never use the teleportation formation to cause trouble. Whoever wants to use this method is courting death. I want to see how many beasts there are for us to kill. Besides, don't forget that we are now cooperating with the Siren Guild. Although they don't show anything now, once the teleportation point is activated, without the corresponding ability, no one can imitate the city of trade. At that time, They will attach great importance to the huge profits that the logistics and security industries can bring them. Whoever wants to cause trouble in the city of trade will be destroying the livelihood of the Siren Guild. In the entire Endless Sea, not many Siren Guilds have the guts to do so, Lin Yuan said firmly. There was no sadness or joy in his eyes, but it made Cyrus shiver. In its eyes, this important teleportation point set up in the City of Trade and Commerce was undoubtedly the biggest drawback and weakness of the City of Trade and Commerce. But in Lin Yuan's eyes, this weakness was simply deliberately released for others to attack. He even wanted to use this opportunity to completely eradicate those who coveted the City of Trade and Commerce. I can understand that this is a murderous plan, but the problem is, the losses are too great. Cyrus shook its head helplessly. The worry in its eyes didn't lessen. Losses? The people behind this will have to pay back 10 times, or even 100 times the amount. A cold light flashed in Lin Yuan's eyes as he sneered. At this juncture, there aren't many who would dare to slap me in the face. Even if the limelight is over, if they come looking for trouble again, it wouldn't be a slap to my face, but a slap to the Sea Demon Guild's face. Smart people wouldn't do such a thing. Those with bad brains deserve to be exterminated. What do you think? Dragon King is right, Cyrus bowed helplessly. Although what Lin Yuan said now was clear and logical, it had a vague hunch that Lin Yuan didn't seem to think so. There might be other deep meanings behind it, but it couldn't figure it out no matter how hard it tried. It could only swallow its curiosity. 2 days later, the countdown for the first phase of the mission, Eliminate the Great Old Ones, has ended. 7,812 people have passed the mission. Rewards will be issued soon. Please continue to work hard. Host's Realm has been upgraded by 1 level. Host's Realm has been upgraded to level 8 of the Desolate Demon Realm. The reward has been distributed. 1 Transcendent Cultivation Technique. The host has received a random cultivation technique, the Universal Scripture. The reward has been distributed. Instilling 200 million Joss Flames. Instilling complete. The reward has been distributed. A series of system prompts sounded, but Lin Yuan's strange eyes didn't have the slightest fluctuation. He just silently flipped through the contents of the Scripture of All Beings that was directly sent to his Sea of Consciousness. He wanted to see if this level of cultivation method was really as he had expected. Absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, refining the meridians in the body, transforming it into true chi and demon energy, breaking through bottlenecks, refining acupoints. A standard cultivation technique. Under the circulation, the demon energy will flow through the body without any restrictions or barriers. In other words, one can imitate any cultivation technique according to a specific circulation method. It can circulate through dozens of meridians to form a small cycle, condensing different true chi or demon energy. It can also circulate freely for a large cycle, allowing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to flow through the body. Every circulation is a refinement for all aspects. Lin Yuan scanned through a third of the contents of the Universal Scripture. He kept commenting, but a glint flashed across his eyes. The level of the cultivation technique was roughly the same as what he had guessed. However, a transcendent cultivation technique like the Universal Scripture was far more powerful than other cultivation techniques at the level of a cultivator. This was because the spiritual energy it cultivated wasn't of any particular type. It was closer to the primordial chaos. The various types of energy cultivated didn't have any attributes, but could derive different attributes through different circulation routes. If it was cultivated on its own, it would be the Universal Scripture. If it was cultivated according to the circulation route of the Mortal Scripture, it would be the Mortal Scripture. I see all living things, I transform into all living things see me, all living things see me as myself, all living things see me as a mirror. As he recited this passage, Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly flashed with surprise. This cultivation technique. Not only could it imitate various cultivation techniques, if it was cultivated to a high level, it could even imitate species. What did it mean by all living things see me as myself, all living things see me as a mirror? In layman's terms, when this cultivation technique was cultivated to a high level, No matter what it was, it would think that it was itself. Wasn't this too terrifying? Was this a transcendent cultivation technique? Bullshit luck. You even randomly obtain this cultivation technique? That's F***king ridiculous. This isn't a transcendent cultivation technique at all. This cultivation technique doesn't have a grade. The only reason it's called a transcendent cultivation technique is because it's already the highest grade. If you really want to describe it, this cultivation technique is a transcendent cultivation technique among transcendent cultivation techniques. The system's words filled the air with the smell of lemons. Lin Yuan's terrifying luck had directly obtained this transcendent cultivation technique from the crystallization of the wisdom of countless worlds. It could only be described as terrifying. This was because even Hongjun couldn't take out this cultivation technique. Since ancient times, there had only been one person who had cultivated this cultivation technique. The creator of heaven and earth, Pan Gu. After Pan Gu had created heaven and earth, he had fought to the death with the sky demon gods. In the end, his body had turned into the mountains and rivers of the primordial world. The so-called witch tribe and Sanqing gods had all evolved from Pan Gu. This wasn't a legend, but something that had truly happened. The root cause of this was the transcendent cultivation technique. Even after Pan Gu's death, his body, organs, and even his aura could turn into all living things, evolving into a primordial world. Lin Yuan was slightly stunned. Then he smiled and said, "Some people get 100 points because they really can only get 100 points. Some people get 100 points because there's only 100 points on the paper. I thought this was a story. I didn't expect to encounter it. Ha 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 ha." Chapter 822. Lin Yuan smiled as he flipped through the contents of the scripture of all life. Then his smile gradually froze on his face. "When I sent out a question mark, it wasn't because I had a problem, but because I thought you had a problem." The scripture of all life did indeed contain all sorts of little techniques for becoming a true god, just as Lin Yuan had guessed. However, the volume was extremely small, and the last one-third of the content was the true cultivation method of the scripture of all life. This cultivation method was not meant for oneself to cultivate at all. In other words, no one would be able to cultivate this cultivation method on their own if it landed in their hands. Its foundation lay in the word all life. This superclass cultivation method was a textbook. Those who obtained this cultivation method would have to impart the cultivation method of the cultivator stage to all life if they wanted to cultivate it. Then these people would begin to cultivate it, and their own progress in the scripture of all life would slowly increase. To put it simply, the more people cultivated the scripture of all life, the higher the level of Lin Yuan's scripture of all life. If everyone in a world cultivated the scripture of all life, then in theory, Lin Yuan could crush the heavenly Tao at any time, and become an existence on par with the rules, or even an existence that could set the rules. Of course, this mighty power was limited to this world where all life cultivated the scripture of all life. If Lin Yuan stepped out of the heavenly gate, he would lose this mighty power, and only retain his cultivation level, becoming an ordinary true god. It seemed like a good prospect, but in reality, it was a trap. Whether the heavenly Tao was heartless or had developed its own consciousness, it would not allow anyone to surpass it. Therefore, anyone who wanted to impart the scripture of all life would have to suffer a vicious beating from the heavenly Tao, including those who cultivated the scripture of all life. The heavenly Tao. In my world, no one is allowed to be more awesome than me. That was roughly what it meant. So this cultivation method could be used as a hammer? He couldn't possibly wait until he was stronger than the heavenly Tao before imparting the scripture of all life. Could he? Wouldn't that be taking off his pants to fart? He could already crush the heavenly Tao. So why would he cultivate the scripture of all life in order to surpass the heavenly Tao? If you can kill the heavenly Tao of this world, you can give it a try. The system slowly displayed its killing intent piercing cold. To kill the heavenly Tao in order to cultivate the living being's scripture. What difference was there between him and Hongjun? If Lin Yuan really had this idea, it would definitely not sit idly by. Even if he couldn't deal with Hongjun, he couldn't allow an existence more terrifying than Hongjun to appear. If I can't train, then I won't train. Lin Yuan decisively ended his meditation from reading the Sutra of All Beings. His consciousness regained control of his body as he muttered nonchalantly. Pangu was the first to create this world. Everything was born after his death. In such a world, who would allow another great god like Pangu to appear? Some people could say, so what if I'm the enemy of the world? However, this kind of person was either the son of destiny favored by the heavenly Tao and had the ability to overturn the entire world, but that was only within the scope of the heavenly Tao's tacit consent. Otherwise, this kind of person would usually die very quickly. Right, isn't it time to release the second phase of the mission? Lin Yuan stretched his slightly stiff body and took the initiative to ask. The second phase of the mission to eliminate the Great Old Ones hadn't been released yet. It was most likely because he had drawn the living being's scripture, which attracted the system's attention. The first phase of the mission, eliminate the Great Old Ones, has been completed. All rewards have been issued. Next, the second phase of the mission has been activated. Name, eliminate the Great Old Ones. Type, mandatory mission for all hosts. Number of participants, 7,812 people. Mission Stage 2 progress, 0%. Mission Stage 2. A great war is about to break out. Speed tracing. All hosts have successfully completed the first phase of the mission. This also means that the Great Old Ones have appeared in the world that all hosts are in. Their forms are not fixed, but their appearances are similarly distorted and ugly. They are distorted living beings of the new era hidden in every corner of the world, attempting to resist the flow of the river of time. Now go fight. Expel these ugly monsters. Defend the new era that you have personally started. Mission completion condition. Find the location of the Great Old Ones and launch a military attack on them. When their vitality is greatly damaged, this phase of the mission will be considered a success. Mission countdown, 90 days. Mission completion reward, 500 million incense power, 1 chance to ignite the divine fire. Mission failure punishment. The system is fully unbound, and all system skills and models will be stripped. When the second phase of the mission was released, Lin Yuan was slightly stunned. At the same time, even more hosts were cursing. After the curtains of the new era opened, the system's countdown was still counting down. Even the hosts who completed the mission couldn't get the reward in advance. They didn't even know what to do next. Now here was the problem. How could he find the Great Old Ones of his world in these 90 days and launch a military attack on them, causing them to be greatly damaged? After Lin Yuan started the revolution, the Great Old Ones had already appeared in the Endless Sea, but they were stopped by the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. If he hadn't come to the Endless Sea by chance and come into contact with the Great Old Ones, he would probably be at a loss now. One could imagine how difficult it was for the hosts in other worlds to find the Great Old Ones, because these mutated monsters might be at the end of the world. Not only did they find them, but the system wouldn't give these hosts such an easy mission. They still had to attack the Great Old Ones until their vitality was greatly damaged. Otherwise, what awaited them was still the system's complete unbinding and depriving them of all system-related abilities. It was equivalent to the system letting them personally trigger the arrival of the apocalypse, and letting them watch helplessly as they were swallowed by the apocalypse. Obviously, the system issued the mission with Lin Yuan as the standard. It didn't care whether the other hosts found the Great Old Ones, or whether they could find the Great Old Ones. However, in the world where Lin Yuan was, the Great Old Ones were directly riding on the face of the flying dragon, and almost appeared in front of him. Therefore, it couldn't give Lin Yuan a reward for nothing. The previous phase of the mission was because it had to start a compulsory mission for all. It couldn't be helped that Lin Yuan took advantage of it. So, the war is about to begin. Lin Yuan's gaze turned and looked in the direction of the Dragon God Temple. The defense line of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had collapsed layer by layer. After all, they had suffered a lot at the hands of Lin Yuan during this period of time. Not only did the Long Jiuzi who were transferred out fail to return to the position in time, but they were also all killed. It would be strange if the defense line, which was already tight everywhere, didn't collapse. It didn't stop during the new year, and continued to explode. Chapter 823. Congratulations, Dragon King, for breaking through the shackles and advancing further on the path of cultivation. Cyrus, Jiao Yi, and Taimu were standing outside the palace, their voices full of respect. They couldn't help it. He was too awesome, and they couldn't help but be impressed. Breakthroughs in realms were not rare, but no one was like Lin Yuan, who did not break through a small realm, but advanced to a large realm. Before the breakthrough, he was still at the 8th level of the Mountain Lord realm, and after the breakthrough, he was at the 8th level of the Desolate Demon realm. He did not care about the basics at all. Even those who reincarnated with innate wisdom would have to move forward step by step when they re-embarked on the path of cultivation. Lin Yuan's cultivation method didn't seem like he was breaking through, but more like he was suppressing his own cultivation. When he felt that the time was right, he would release part of the seal and reveal part of his true strength. Thinking along this line of thought, what was Lin Yuan's true realm? However, although this line of thought was off track, it wasn't wrong in essence. Although Lin Yuan was still a level 8 desolate demon, the limit of his realm was the Demon King realm. To him, the Ancestor Demon realm didn't pose any difficulty or threshold. As long as the gray-scaled Flood Dragon people, or the northern frontier developed well enough, and had an endless supply of Joss flames, becoming stronger would be as easy as eating and drinking. You may rise. Lin Yuan didn't have any joy or sadness in his eyes. He just said indifferently, I'm about to go to the defense line built by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas to carry out my previous agreement and defend the Endless Sea from the invasion of the aberrations. I'll leave the matters here to you. Don't disappoint me. I'll go with you. Unexpectedly, Taizun, who had only met Lin Yuan once, took the lead to speak, making the atmosphere oppressive. In the entire Endless Sea, no one was willing to have anything to do with the aberrations. After all, even the powerful Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could barely resist the invasion of the aberrations. Although it was fine in the short term, no one knew what would happen after a long time. Therefore, if they could avoid participating in the war, no one would take the initiative to go. Lin Yuan was also slightly startled. He stared at Taimu, as if he wanted to know what this giant crab was thinking. The Dragon King has already said about the aberrations. This is a chaos that will overturn the entire world. Even if we retreat today, we'll just enjoy a few more days of peace. Since we have a chance to fight, why not? Taimu raised his pair of giant claws and spoke in a muffled voice. According to the memory provided by the doppelganger, Taimu seemed to have come to the Wuxia Sea area very soon after it surrendered. It never expressed its own opinion on anything, but it would meticulously complete any request made by Jiao Yi or Cyrus. It was very much like an uninvited tool, rather than a bold existence that dared to bet the future of the entire race on Lin Yuan being destined to rise to the top of the Endless Sea when the situation was uncertain. It wasn't hard to figure out why Taimu was hiding his strength. After all, the gray-scaled Flood Dragon person was related to Lin Yuan by blood. However, his current strength couldn't be compared to the other sea demon tribes. If Taimu wanted to become Lin Yuan's right-hand man at this time, he would be courting death. But even if you go with me, I won't take special care of the brave crab tribe. Lin Yuan glanced at Taimu and said indifferently. Taimu was silent for a while, then said in a low voice, I don't dare to expect that, but I will definitely go with Master Dragon King. First, because the brave crab tribe has surrendered to the Dragon King. There's no possibility of going back. Second, what I said before was indeed what I thought. If we don't fight now while we still have the strength to fight, are we going to wait for them to infect and distort all the beasts in the Endless Sea, and then wait for them to come to us? Then you'll go with me. Lin Yuan slightly nodded and didn't say anything more. Then Jiao Yi and I will take care of the matters in the City of Trade. Cyrus pondered for a while, then took the initiative to take the responsibility. Although it had already guessed that Lin Yuan would definitely cause trouble after returning, it didn't expect that Lin Yuan would not only break through a big realm, but also go directly to the front line to fight those who forced the dragon tribe of the Four Seas to give up the Endless Sea. Of course, it didn't want to go to the front line. Otherwise, Jiao Yi would be in charge of all the matters in the City of Trade, and it wouldn't take any responsibility. But now that Tai Mu had expressed his opinion, if it didn't do something, it would be dead on the spot. All right. Lin Yuan looked at Cyrus meaningfully and nodded again. Including the 2 demon kings from the brave crab tribe, there were 3 demon kings guarding the city of trade. There shouldn't be any sea demon tribe that would dare to come and cause trouble in a short period of time. After defeating the great old ones, if they came to cause trouble because of their greed for benefits, they would have to deal with the Sea Demon Guild. At the same time, Northern Frontier, Shunning City. Li Zhong tore a piece of paper with a ferocious expression. His gaze swept across the faces of the 3 people in the hall, and he said coldly, "Are you all trash?" The Association of the Monster Emperor, Yi Busho, and MI7 were chasing after Luo Su, but they were easily shaken off by Luo Su, and they even lost people in the process. With your level, I really should consider suggesting to the Dragon King to get rid of you. Luo Su's embroidered uniform guards are enough. The 3 people in the hall were Li Hui, one of the vice presidents of the Association of the Monster Emperor, Yi Lusheng, Yi Bush's centurion, and Yu Dingchen of MI7. These 3 people belonged to the absolute upper echelons of their respective organizations. This time, they were recruited to follow Luo Su. In the end, in just 2 days, the 3 of them were ruthlessly slapped in the face by Luo Su. Not only did they lose him, but they also lost a lot of people. In the process, Luo Su didn't even use the embroidered uniform guards. He only relied on his personal ability and anti-reconnaissance awareness to play them in the palm of his hand. Yu Dingchen's expression was also ferocious. The MI7 suffered the greatest loss in this joint operation, especially since the MI7 was accepted by the Dragon King and was officially established. This was the first time they mobilized more than half of their people to take charge of an operation. Under the situation where the people in the Frost Mirror grassland were not moved, he was already going all out. If there was no good result, the MI7 that he and Zhang Xiuzhu created together would indeed face the possibility of disbanding. I'll give you one last chance. In 3 days, if you can't catch Luo Su, the 3 of you can go back and prepare to write a report and a resignation report. Li Zhong flicked his sleeves, and his gloomy face returned to indifference. Chapter 824. Lord Li Zhong, please calm down. Yi Lusheng slowly raised his head and said in a low voice, "This operation didn't end well, but the 3 of us worked together and did our best in all aspects. However, Luo Su still disappeared under our noses. This can only mean one possibility. Luo Su has indeed betrayed us. Now there is another force lurking in Shunning City, whose strength is not inferior to ours." And Li Zhong raised one of his eyebrows. "So we can't rule out the possibility that Luo Su took the initiative to act strangely this time to lure us to focus on him or Shunning City, so that the force working with him can carry out some secret operations. So, I personally think that it is unnecessary to continue to keep an eye on Luo Su. What we need to do now is to determine who is working with Luo Su and what their purpose is." Yi Lusheng took a deep breath and glanced at Li Hui and Yu Dingchen. He said in a low voice, "I apply for Yi Buyao to withdraw all members from the surveillance and capture plan against Luo Su this time. Then we will disperse and keep an eye on other places, so that we won't be caught off guard." As soon as he finished speaking, Li Zhong rubbed his forehead, as if he was seriously considering the feasibility of this proposal. At present, the only force that could lurk in the northern frontier and have the ability to wrestle with the 3 major intelligence agencies was undoubtedly the Northern Restoration Society. Even the Sky Demon who escaped into the Hengduan Mountains could not hide in front of the various detection and sealing devices and formations produced by the Ministry of Works. They could barely continue to hide, let alone stir up trouble. So, what was the purpose of the Northern Restoration Society to attract the 3 major intelligence agencies? If it was before, Li Zhong would only snort at the clowns of the Northern Restoration Society. But now in his heart the danger rating of the Northern Restoration Society was actually in a rising state, because the members of the Northern Restoration Society were all captured and sent to the Ministry of Works, but so far, no valuable information was obtained. Not to mention finding out the origin of the mutation of these immortals. They could not even kill them. This was a group of real monsters. An unkillable monster. Even if they were soaked in the black water of the Nether Realm, they could not be killed. The Nether River creatures tore them apart again and again, but they could not assimilate them. Their undying ability was even more terrifying than the Nether River creatures. After the Nether River creatures were injured, they would temporarily turn into black water and reform their bodies. However, even if these immortals were torn to pieces, they could quickly reform. The Ministry of Works had even experimented with separating them, but this was meaningless. Once the pieces of flesh were separated too far, or couldn't be retrieved, new body tissues would grow out of their bodies. The abandoned body tissues would quickly lose their vitality and turn into powder before dissipating. The purpose of the Restoration North Society. Li Zhong muttered softly a few times. Suddenly, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "Their goal is the Ministry of Works. The black water of the Nether Realm and the immortals were all stored in the laboratories of the Ministry of Works of the Northern Frontier. If these monsters really wanted to do something big behind the Northern Frontier's back, then there was no doubt that they wanted to attack the Ministry of Works of the Northern Frontier. Otherwise, there was nothing in the Northern Frontier that was worth the attention of the Restoration North Society. As for whether their goal was to rescue their companions or to study the black water of the Nether Realm like they did with the immortals, there was no difference in essence. Because once the other party succeeded, it meant that the Restoration North Society would give the Northern Frontier a resounding slap in the face. Everyone involved in this matter would be labeled as incompetent. At this moment, the desk behind Li Zhong shone with a red light and an ear-piercing beeping sound. They really did it. Quick, come with me. Li Zhong waved his hand. His face, which had finally returned to normal, darkened again. His desk was connected to many arrays. The other end was directly connected to the offices of various important organizations in the Northern Frontier. Once the corresponding alarm sounded, it meant that these important organizations were under attack. They had to immediately organize reinforcements. Luo Su, how dare he? How dare he cooperate with the Restoration North Society? Li Hui said in shock as he ran. Although Lin Yuan was not a cruel and tyrannical ruler, he was willing to kill people, especially those who were incompetent and betrayed. In Lin Yuan's eyes, these two types of people were unforgivable. Yu Dingchen and Yi Luxing followed behind Li Hui with large strides. However, they frowned at the same time and looked at each other. Very quickly, Yu Dingchen gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "Sir Li Zhong, we will go to the Ministry of Works. You should return to your office and stay there. I have a feeling that this Northern Restoration Conference has finally managed to trick us. It will not be as simple as attacking the Ministry of Works." As soon as he finished speaking, another ear-piercing alarm sounded behind him. Li Zhong carefully listened to the rhythm of the alarm. He gritted his teeth and said, "The death row prison has also sounded the alarm." There were many rules in the Northern Frontier's new laws. However, when Lin Yuan implemented these new laws, it was to establish a moral standard, or a moral bottom line. Even if someone violated the rules of the Northern Frontier's new laws, they would only be detained, fined, or punished through labor. Very few people would be locked up in the death row prison. However, this did not mean that the death row prison was built for decoration. Those who repeatedly violated the Northern Frontier's new laws, those who violated the rules and hunted humans or demonic beasts, and those who sold all kinds of prohibited items. These people were all prisoners locked up in the death row prison. According to their crimes, they would bear different punishments or await the arrival of the death row. The Restoration North Society's attack on the death row prison this time was most likely to release the prisoners inside. Whether these people were wreaking havoc in order to take revenge on the Northern Frontier, or simply running away, there was no doubt that it would have an extremely serious impact on Shunning City. It was to the point that they had to prioritize dealing with these felons. They could only watch as the Restoration North Society swaggered away. The other party had obviously made a plan long ago. Moreover, they knew all kinds of information about Shunning City like the back of their hand. For example, the location of the laboratory that the Ministry of Works changed irregularly and how many prisoners were locked up in the death row prison. If no one in a high position told them this information, the Restoration North Society would definitely not be able to find out. The moment the Restoration North Society's plan was launched, Luo Su was directly promoted from a suspect to a criminal. I will lead the palace guards to reinforce the death row prison. I will leave the Ministry of Works to you guys. You must stop the other party. Li Zhong shouted solemnly. He had already changed his direction and ran towards the residence of the prince's mansion guards. Chapter 825. I feel a little uneasy. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly as he swam at the bottom of the sea. As a demigod, whenever he had such a feeling, it meant that something big was going to happen. Was it the south? Or the northern frontier? Or was it the dragon palace that he was about to go to? Lin Yuan pondered for a moment, and then called Batu. Batu, what happened at the northern frontier? As the god of war in the northern frontier god system, and with the dragon aura, Batu had supreme authority when he was at the northern frontier. Nothing could escape his eyes. Therefore it was always convenient to ask Batu. Besides, Lin Yuan could directly order Batu to take action in case Li Zhong and the others were not enough to complete Lin Yuan's deployment. Shunning City was attacked. Northern Restoration Society. It's a god of foreign. Evil god. He has subordinates. Undead Lin Yuan. It was hard to say whether Batu had made any progress during this period of time, but his spiritual intelligence was definitely not as simple as a newly awakened one. It was not difficult to observe the situation at the northern frontier and report to Lin Yuan, but the way he reported it intermittently. Their cooperation was affected by a third party. God. A foreign one? Evil god? Lin Yuan's squinted eyes opened slightly, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. When he was not at the northern frontier, it seemed that some Tom, Dick, and Harry were stirring up trouble again. Lord Dragon King, why do I feel that you are a little uneasy? Taimu swam to Lin Yuan, who had slowed down, and asked. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and gently shook his head. I'm fine. Let's continue on our way. Lin Yuan wasn't surprised that there were ancient gods on the northern frontier. After all, in the ancient era of the martial heaven continent, the rulers of this world had been the demonic beasts. No matter how prosperous the current human era was, there was no need to doubt the foundation of a once powerful power. In the Endless Sea, there were 6 dragon gods, 1 ancient god of lizards, and even more ancient gods. Perhaps most of them had been annihilated in the long river of history, but there were still a lot of them who were struggling at death's door. Although the Hengduan Mountains was the last foothold of the demonic beasts on land, it was still a recognized holy land of the demonic beasts in ancient times. Therefore, it was not surprising that some ancient gods of demonic beasts were sleeping in this place. However, this guy should not be very powerful. If he had the same power as the ancestral dragon, there was no need for him to wait until he was sure that Lin Yuan was not on the northern frontier. If he wanted to, he could directly flatten the northern frontier. The only thing that Lin Yuan cared about was the last word that Bata said, immortal. For true gods and immortals, there was no concept of death. At this point, they were basically living as long as heaven and earth. As long as the belief of true gods continued, immortals could survive the 3 disasters and 5 decays and live forever. Even if the world was destroyed, they could cross the sea of bitterness and go to other worlds. The so-called immortal was always for mortal creatures. So there were immortal creatures under his command? This was no small matter. As an immortal, Lin Yuan also had immortal creatures under his command, and so did the creatures from the underworld river. But this was the authority of the god of the underworld. Apart from the gods of the underworld, there were no other gods who could grant their subordinates the ability of immortality. But shouldn't Lin Yuan be the only god of the underworld in the Tianwu continent? This was decided by the will of the world. The Tianwu continent was an incomplete world. There was no heaven realm, no underworld. Lin Yuan, the god of the underworld, was now a general without an army. He did not even have a god of the underworld under him. The underworld had not been opened yet, so the authority of the god of the underworld was not fixed. If an existence with the same possibility of becoming the god of the underworld appeared in the northern frontier, then Lin Yuan was bound to face a huge challenge. This was not a problem that could be solved by a few words and showing off his muscles when facing the ancient lizard god, or the ancestral dragon. No matter which world it was, when two gods fought for authority, the war would be incomparably cruel. It was not rare for the war to last for thousands of years. Before one side gave up or died, the war would not end. Batu, find that evil god and kill him. Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with coldness as he silently instructed. Can't beat him, he's very strong. Batu's voice was still intermittent, but this time he expressed a complete meaning. His previous words had been interfered with by the other side, so some very important information had been erased. But this time, Batu delivered the entire sentence. This also meant that the other side was also using Batu's mouth to declare war on him. Batu was not his opponent. If he wanted to deal with him, Lin Yuan would either have to give up everything in the Endless Sea and return to the northern frontier, or watch him continue to nibble away at the northern frontier and defeat the newly established northern frontier god system. He would completely devour everything about Lin Yuan and turn them into his nutrients. Ding! Congratulations to the host. You have received a provocation from a foreign god and triggered a mission. War of Gods. Name: War of Gods. Type: Triggered mission. Speed: someone as noble as you only needs to fight steadily, one step at a time, and you will soon become a true god, or even the king of Hades that this world's will has decided. But now, a foreign god whose authority is close to yours is not willing to give up the throne to you, who has yet to become powerful. He has issued a provocation to you. Bet the authority of the king of Hades and fight. Mission completion condition: kill the foreign god, extinguish his divine fire, and devour his divinity. Mission failure condition: the northern frontier has fallen, all temples of the Blackwater Dragon King destroyed, and all believers killed. Mission completion reward: 1 bloodline evolution. Mission failure penalty: deprived of the opportunity to become a god. For the rest of your life, you can only grow into a laughable fake god. With just a glance at the refreshed mission, Lin Yuan realized that the difficulty of this mission was definitely not low. The other side's level of difficulty was definitely beyond his imagination. One chance to evolve his bloodline. Now Lin Yuan already had the bloodline of the Flood Dragon, which could barely be regarded as the bloodline of the Dragon clan. But in the untainted world, this level of bloodline was not even qualified to be cannon fodder. But if he went one step further, no matter which direction he evolved in, he would undoubtedly become a real Dragon clan. His abilities in all aspects would usher in a leap of leaps and bounds. Moreover, after evolving his dragon claws, his body's practicality would increase, and he would even have more means of attack. Chapter 826. Lin Yuan stopped swimming. Taimu approached him again. Although he didn't say anything, one could see the obvious doubt in his eyes. Normally, with Lin Yuan's current status in the Endless Sea, it didn't matter even if he made a great promise. Anyway, those sea demons wouldn't let Lin Yuan fight in the most dangerous frontline, which was the only retreat route. They wouldn't even let Lin Yuan go to the battlefield. Therefore, as long as Lin Yuan didn't want to go, even if the defense line of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas collapsed completely, Lin Yuan could just be a bystander and go home. But now it was Lin Yuan who was going to the battlefield, but it was Lin Yuan who had to stop again and again. Taimu really couldn't understand what this Black Jiao was thinking at this moment. He didn't even bother to pretend on the surface. If you are holding a weapon that can be said to be terrifying, if you release it, it is enough to make any enemy tremble with fear. However, you are unable to truly control this weapon. In fact, you can be certain that if nothing unexpected happens, one day in the future, this weapon will turn its muzzle against you. If that happens, would you release it because of a troublesome enemy? Lin Yuan suddenly asked without thinking. Taimu was confused. After thinking for a short while, Taimu smiled and replied, "That depends on how tricky my enemy is. If he can really force me to deal with it by using this method that will hurt me a lot, I will definitely release it without hesitation. Otherwise, if I can't even guarantee the present, how can I talk about the future? Lin Yuan was silent for a while. Then he narrowed his eyes and murmured, "Then let him out." At the same time, in the headquarters of the Northern Frontier Academy in Shunning City, a man with heavy eye bags and a sallow face walked out of the back of the mountain of the academy step by step with his hands behind his back. One could still vaguely see that his clothes used to be a white robe, but now it had been scraped into rags by branches and gravel. The parts that were barely intact were also stained with large patches of mud. His whole body exuded a strange smell. The stench of sweat, mud, blood, various smells mixed together. Along the way, the disciples of the academy subconsciously covered their mouths and noses and made way for him. However, there wasn't the slightest bit of disdain or contempt on the faces of the academy's disciples. When they looked at the man, their eyes were even filled with all sorts of complicated emotions such as envy, reverence, and so on. Because this man came from Haoran Courtyard. It was different from any branch of the Northern Frontier Academy. The Haoran Yard didn't set up any tutors. It just opened up a small cave residence in the back mountain of the academy, where various classics were placed for the disciples to study by themselves. After the disciples entered, the Haoran Yard would start a big tactical formation, which directly isolated part of the back mountain and the cave residence. Then, the disciples of the Haoran Yard would have to rely on themselves for food, clothing, housing and transportation. Those who could survive to finish those classics and break out of the tactical formation with their own ability would directly reserve a position in the higher-ups of the Northern Frontier. As for those who couldn't make it out alive, most of them were fed to the evil beasts in the back mountain. Yes, there were demonic beasts in the back mountain of the Northern Frontier Academy, and their numbers were huge. They didn't come here to listen to the teachings of the Northern Frontier Academy, but simply to train the disciples of the Haoran Yard. Here, they could ignore the new law of the Northern Frontier that humans and demons were not allowed to kill each other. Most of the disciples of the Haoran Yard were their rations. One of the selection criteria of the Haoran Yard was that the disciples couldn't have any cultivation until they graduated from the Haoran Yard. If they wanted to learn the way of cultivation, they could go to other branches and compete fairly with their peers. If they wanted to take a shortcut, they had to pay the price. There wasn't much food and water prepared in the small cave residence. Even if they ate less, considering that ordinary people couldn't absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to replenish their energy consumption, they could only eat for 3 days at most. After 3 days, they could either walk out of the safe small cave residence and turn those demonic beasts into food, or pick wild fruits and do under the eyes of the demonic beasts. In the eyes of ordinary people, this was a dead end. Either they mastered all the knowledge in the small cave residence within 3 days, or they risked their lives to look for food in the mountains and forests. If they were careless, they would be eaten by the demonic beasts as snacks. In fact, this was indeed a dead end. The probability of 1 in 10,000 disciples of the Haoran Yard mastering the knowledge was high. But today, they saw a disciple of the Haoran Yard walking out of the deep mountains. "Senior brother, I'm also a student of the Haoran Yard, but I've been feeling uneasy. If senior brother can teach me something, it's great. I'll definitely give you a generous gift." A young man in a brocade robe walked out of the crowd, as if he couldn't smell the unpleasant odor of the other party. Generally speaking, there were only 2 kinds of people who applied for the Haoran Yard. One was the children of aristocratic families who really had no talent for cultivation. They were born with a family background that others looked up to, but they were not willing to stop there. They hoped to go further and become the powerful class of the Northern Frontier. Instead of an ordinary rich man, such as this young man in brocade robe. While speaking, the manservant behind him took out a small wooden box, which was filled with pieces of crystal-clear spiritual stones. Any one of them could be exchanged for more than 10,000 gold ingots in the secular world. But at this moment, he took out such a large amount of resources, just to give some useful advice. The other kind of disciples of the Haoran Yard were the grassroots who had no family background. It made no difference whether they had the talent for cultivation or not. Anyway, with their family background, it was impossible to find any cultivation methods. Even if they were lucky enough to get one or two simple cultivation methods, their family couldn't afford the resources that could make them cultivate smoothly. The cultivation world had always been so cruel. Regardless of the talent, a superior cultivation method was enough to stop 90% of the young people who wanted to become cultivators. When this problem was solved, the consumption of spiritual objects and spiritual stones every day for cultivation was also an astronomical figure. Even if it was a mortal who wanted to build the foundation for his child, he would have to spend a lot of money on medicinal baths a day. Those who didn't have mines really couldn't afford to cultivate. Although the disciples of poor families had the word poor, they could still take out some of their family assets for cultivation. If they were from a grassroots background, even if they entered other yards and got the inheritance of cultivation methods and cultivation resources allocated by the school, they couldn't compare with those of the schools with background. If they didn't want to be assigned to a student as a pawn after graduation, entering the Haren yard was obviously the only way out. Fair? There had never been any fairness in the world. The cultivation methods taught by the academy were the same, and the cultivation resources allocated were also the same. But if the family was willing to give money and resources to provide a better cultivation environment, who could say anything? Chapter 827. Generous gift? There's no need for that. If you want to come out of the back mountain alive, you only need to remember one thing. The sloppy man smiled and muttered, I cultivate noble spirit. Demons and monsters cannot get close to me. After saying that, he smiled apologetically and took the initiative to walk around the youth in embroidered clothes. He walked towards the dormitory that he was originally assigned to. He came from a humble background. He did not have any family background. He was also not favored by any great figure. He was not willing to be reduced to dust, so he could only force himself to risk his life. However, it was all over now. The hardships he suffered and the hard work he put in would all become stepping stones, supporting him to reach the clouds that he yearned for. The young man in embroidered clothes was slightly startled. His brows unconsciously furrowed as he muttered this sentence. On the first day of entering the Haren Academy, there was an instructor who came to deliver the academy uniform to me. What is the use of repeating it to me? What was noble spirit? Even Lin Yuan could not explain it. It was a bit of a stretch to say that it was the path of cultivation, because the people who walked on this path had never been judged based on their cultivation level. If they really cultivated noble spirit, even if they were immortal, they would be able to make demons and monsters avoid them wherever they went. Although it was not the path of cultivation, in the Tianwu clan, other than the various rogue cultivators, the three schools of Buddhism, Taoism and Confucianism were at the top. The so-called noble spirit was a kind of philosophy of Confucianism. However, in the entire world, there was not a single Confucian cultivator who cultivated noble spirit. The Confucian cultivators of the Tianwu world were more proficient in calligraphy and writing. With each stroke, they drew on the noble spirit, using the principles of the world to suppress their opponents. Those who were successful in cultivation could casually write a book that could suppress demons and monsters. It could also be used for the younger generation to learn. However, it had to be mentioned that the status of Confucian cultivators in this world had always been very awkward. Under the situation of being on the same level, Taoist and Buddhist cultivators did not dare to say that they could beat Confucian cultivators, but they definitely had the upper hand in a battle of magical powers. More importantly, the other two sects all had cultivation methods above the Kongming realm. If one continued to cultivate step by step, one could become a powerhouse. The Confucian school also had this kind of method, but it could not be cultivated step by step. Or it could be said that each Confucian scholar walked a different path. Some were skilled in poetry, some were skilled in writing, and some were skilled in governing a country. Although each Confucian scholar could not compare to the cultivators of other schools, they were all indispensable existences in the great empires. Even a tyrannical emperor like Lei Qiusheng, who had founded an empire, had to treat the Confucian school with respect and courtesy. On the other hand, when it came to the other two sects that were even more powerful, Lei Qiuxing dared to use thunderous methods on them if they dared to disobey. Although Lin Yuan did not know what the Great Spirit was specifically, he could roughly associate it with something like the path of divine path. Because of the huge flow of knowledge brought by the information explosion in his previous life, Lin Yuan only needed to take a glance at the inheritance of the Confucian school to know that the Confucian school in this world was somehow missing a part. The Confucian school emphasized self-cultivation, family management, governance, and peace in the world. The Confucian school in this world did not have the concept of self-cultivation. No matter what kind of person, as long as they could write calligraphy and write essays, they could call themselves Confucian scholars. However, they forgot that the foundation of all Confucian cultivation was self-cultivation. If a person could not even take care of himself, how could he govern a country? Therefore, on the path of the Confucian school in this world, reaching the Kongming realm was the limit. At this point, with the help of the power of the major dynasties, they could barely be on par with the Taoist school of Buddhism. After all, they had not really stepped into the world of cultivation, and had not even seen the real world of cultivation. They were just ordinary people. Even after countless years, there might not be an existence like the immortal of poetry and the sage of calligraphy. Therefore, to become a Confucian scholar in the Northern Frontier Academy, they had to learn to force themselves to understand the meaning of the Great Spirit under the most difficult conditions. If they could not cultivate the Great Spirit, they deserved to die in the mouth of the demonic beasts. Lin Yuan had spent so much money to establish the Haoran Academy, and he had also directly promised a high position in the Northern Frontier as a reward. He did not want to cultivate batch after batch of Confucian scholars in the Kongming realm, not to mention that they might not be able to reach the Kongming realm. On the contrary, if they cultivated the Great Spirit, even if they did not have a cultivation base, they could still speak and repel demons and ghosts. Ordinary demonic beasts could not even get close to them, let alone hurt them. Even if he relied on his cultivation to kill these Confucian scholars who were protected by the Great Spirit, he would not end up well. This was because these people were favored by the heavens. If they died a violent death for no reason, in the world where the will of the world existed, the heavenly punishment and heavenly wrath could be directly arranged. This sloppy man completed the homework set by Lin Yuan, and cultivated the Great Spirit. As long as he did not change his mind and insisted on himself, he would be qualified to enter the higher realm of Confucian school. In Lin Yuan's previous life, the Tao initiation realm was the Great Confucian. In the sovereign realm, the sage realm was the Confucian sage. In the transcendent realm, the sage realm was the real sage realm like Confucius and Mencius. In fact, whether to cultivate such an existence had always been a thorn in Lin Yuan's heart, because in a sense he was also one of the demons. If he really cultivated a living sage, then he had to consider whether there would be a day in the future when such an existence that he personally cultivated would stand on the opposite side of him for the sake of righteousness, and become his biggest stumbling block. But what Tiekuan said was reasonable. Now that the outer gods were on the lookout, he could not return to the northern frontier in a short time. If he did not release these Confucian scholars who had cultivated the Great Spirit, what other means could he use to punish them? Besides, the Great Spirit was different from cultivation. It would not stay the same forever. If one adhered to the right path and studied well, he could even achieve the level of law with his words. However, if one was blinded by wine and meat, the Great Spirit would dissipate in a short time. Not everyone was qualified to become a living sage, was it? Chen Fong, a disciple of the Haoran courtyard, has finished his studies and wants to contribute to the northern frontier. I hope the dean will approve. The sloppy man spoke in a clear voice as he strolled forward. What was strange was that he did not have any cultivation base, but his words were like a great bell. The entire Northern Frontier Academy heard these words. But before these people could recover from their shock, the voice paused slightly, and then began to spread with a louder movement, as if it had resonated with heaven and earth. Everyone in Shunning City heard these words. Regardless of whether they knew where the Haoran courtyard was, they all realized one thing at this moment. In the Northern Frontier Academy, it was very likely that a real monster had walked out. Suddenly, a black cloud seemed to surge over and float above Chen Fong's head. Thunder was brewing in it, as if a thunder punishment was about to descend. Chen Fong just silently raised his head and stared at the black cloud for a moment, and then softly scolded, "Evil spirits, disperse." There weren't any energy fluctuations, but the moment his voice fell, the dark clouds above his head actually dispersed. Brothers, happy Valentine's Day. I wish all the lovers in the world a happy ending. Chapter 828. In the Hengduan Mountains. Pfft. Lei Fan, who was dressed in a white robe, suddenly raised his head and spat out a mouthful of blood, his face looking sickly pale. The backlash from having his technique broken was not pleasant, but to him who had become an immortal, it was just a small problem, and he would be able to recover in a short period of time. But at this moment, he clearly realized that what he was about to face was not a small problem. A battle that was separated by countless miles, came quickly and ended quickly. He did not even have the chance to make a move, and his technique was broken by a mortal who had no cultivation. That Black Jiao. What kind of monster had he cultivated? He was already so strong when he was still a mortal. When he had officially embarked on the path of cultivation, how strong would he be? Don't go looking for trouble with that guy. There is something terrifying coiling around his body. If you see him in the future, just avoid him. A black shadow appeared behind Lei Fan, his voice cold and sinister. Lei Fan raised his eyebrows and questioned. Avoid him? That's easy for you to say. For this battle, I had calculated the time, place and people, and even used my biggest trump card. I thought that I could give the Northern Frontier a hard blow, but in the end, the Northern Frontier Ministry of Works has not been taken down till now. And those prisoners who are locked up in the death row prison are not willing to cooperate. Even when the prison doors are opened, they are too lazy to run out, as if there is something terrifying outside. Speaking till here, he paused for a moment, his purple eyes flashing coldly. So what if we have taken down the Northern Frontier Ministry of Works? That Black Jiao is using such actions to slap us in the face. The Northern Frontier Ministry of Works is just one of his methods. This disciple of the Hao Ranyard is probably the same. For this operation against the Northern Frontier, he had racked his brains and used a large number of secret methods and arrangements, even Luo Su, his trump card that he could only use once. But the result was not satisfactory. He had already lost half of the battle right from the start. I've said it before, you are too anxious. That Black Jiao is after all an existence of the same level as me. The Black Shadow was not anxious at all, and even had the mood to tease him. Besides, only such an opponent has the meaning of conquering. For a battle where you have 100% chance of winning, it is not something that a person of your ability should participate in. To meet such an opponent, you should be excited. However, Lei Fan frowned and said coldly, I don't know what position you are talking about. Back then, it was you who had saved my life. This time, in order to save those immortals under your command, I had even sacrificed everything I had. So from now on, you and I don't owe each other anything. No matter what I do in the future, don't tell me what to do, understand? Uh-huh. The Black Shadow laughed coldly and said mockingly, So back then, you did not even have the power to fight back. You just saw a flaw that I had purposely exposed and you rushed to bite me. I had thought that since you had lost once, you would not make the same mistake a second time. You should have learned your lesson, right? Speaking up to this point, the mockery in his voice deepened. Calm down and look at the whole situation. Otherwise, you will never be able to win against that Black Jiao in this lifetime. No matter how many chances I give you, you will still be trampled under his feet. Lei Fan's expression gradually turned ferocious. Don't show such a scary expression. You should know very well that you can't kill me. The Black Shadow laughed coldly and said in a low voice, Even you are a part of me. What right do you have to kill me? At most, I will admit that your deployment this time is even with me, and we don't owe each other anything. Emph. Lei Fan snorted coldly and turned his head to one side, no longer looking at the Black Shadow. But what do you plan to do next? At the end of the day, you still want to continue to be the enemy of that Black Jiao. But now, those hidden hands that you have arranged have all fallen into the net. Leaving me is equivalent to leaving the Resurrection Society, leaving the heroic spirit core, and being alone. What do you have to fight against that black Jiao? But this operation is not without any results. We have caught those people from the northern frontier by surprise. Although we did not rescue all the immortals, we have gathered a small number of them. This is not a small force. If you are willing to cooperate with me, I can let you continue to command these heroic spirits. How about it? The black shadow continued to provoke Lei Fan's nerves. Lei Fan's face twitched slightly. The black shadow's words to him were like the whispers of the devil. He knew that being entangled with this black shadow would only cause him to fall deeper into the abyss. But deep in his heart, he unconsciously wanted to agree to this. What hope did he have now? If anyone said that the Shimwu dynasty could still be saved, then this person was either a fool or a joke. If he did not cooperate with this black shadow and relied on his own strength to deal with that black Jiao, what was the difference between that and sending himself to his death? He was not afraid of death, but he did not want his death to be worthless. I want to know your next plan. Lei Fan turned his head and stared at the black shadow. On the other side, Lin Yuan, who had released a disciple from the Haoran courtyard, stopped for the third time. But it was not because of the chaotic thoughts in his mind, but because there was a small underwater town that suddenly appeared in front of him, which made him and Tai Zhao slightly stunned. In fact, this place had not officially left the territory of the Willowstone Sea region. But Lin Yuan could be sure that this small town in front of him was not the gathering place of sea demons that was recorded in the records of the Willowstone Sea region. It was more like, it had suddenly appeared. Tai Zhao only felt a chill on his back. Looking at the small town that blocked the only way, he said in a low voice, Lord Dragon King, this small town is not under the jurisdiction of the Willowstone Sea region. As an old neighbor of the Willowstone Sea region, I never knew that there was a small town here. Lin Yuan slowly raised the tip of his tail and said with a light smile, since we are here, let's make the best of it. That small town did not belong here, but under the observation of the Eye of God. All the buildings were real. Even looking at the lines, they did not seem to have been built recently. It was more like someone had used some kind of great magical power to move them from the original location of the small town to here. Such a strange town that appeared, and just happened to block the only way through. If one said that it was just a coincidence, no one would believe it. It was just that there was no sign of life in this small town, and it was not clear who had done it. Was it the sea demon tribe that did not want him to risk his life on the battlefield, and deliberately stopped him? Or was the situation at the front line so bad that even some aberrations had broken through the line of defense, and deliberately came to kill Lin Yuan? I will go and explore the way first. Tai Zhao clenched his 2 giant claws, his 8 big feet piercing into the sand, and walked sideways to the strange town in front of him. Chapter 829. It's too troublesome. Lin Yuan shook his head gently. The demonic energy in his body surged, and the water around him began to swirl and converge, forming a dragon image that roared and crashed into the strange town that had suddenly appeared. It was unclear whether the person who had moved to this strange town was a friend or foe. Why did he have to take the risk to test it out? Wouldn't it be the same if he just tore it down and strode over? Demonic beasts should still have their own way of thinking. If he could solve the problem with his hands, why did he have to use his brain? Roar. The 8 water dragon images let out dragon roars and crashed into the strange town. However, a layer of blue light suddenly lit up. The water dragon image that Lin Yuan had used up nearly 700 points of demonic energy only caused a few ripples on the blue light curtain that covered the town. Formation. Lin Yuan was slightly startled, and a bitter smile appeared in his eyes. After the incident at Mount Cloud Crane, he had developed a kind of reverence for formation mages. He was a transmigrator who had a relationship with the heavenly axiom of another world. He had connived with demonic beasts to attack humans, causing endless slaughter. He had also declared himself king and wantonly carried out reforms, leading to terrifying beings like the Great Old Ones. All he had done was to be hunted down by Lin Lixing once. However, the formation master who had set up the evil formation at Mount Cloud Crane did not leave any trace of life in the formation, and it immediately attracted the attention of this world's will. It even used the system to issue a mission for him. Looking at the leopard through a tube, one could see the big picture. If a formation master's power was pushed to the extreme, it would be a kind of power that could defy the heavens. He did not expect that after avoiding the disaster in the south and returning to the depths of the endless sea, the first opponent he encountered would also set up a formation to block his way. Was this a special fate? Thinking of this, Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly turned cold, and he growled, "Something's wrong, retreat quickly." Tai Zhuang was stunned by Lin Yuan's shout. He subconsciously turned his head, but his eyes instantly widened. He stretched out a crab pincer and pointed behind Lin Yuan, seeming to be frightened. Clang! A sword chime rang out. A streak of cold light appeared like a white rainbow, instantly piercing through the layers of demonic power barriers that Lin Yuan had hastily set up. It chopped onto Lin Yuan's scales that had turned from black to gold. The remaining force did not stop there, directly tearing apart the scales under the state of the golden body secrets and cutting into his flesh. Only then was the sword force stopped. The person who drew the sword was also decisive. Seeing that he couldn't kill Lin Yuan with one strike, he didn't rush to draw a second strike. Instead, he flung the blade of the sword, bringing with it a puff of Lin Yuan's flood dragon blood that was beginning to turn from red to gold. Lin Yuan's figure was like a ghost as he retreated more than 30 meters before coming to a stop. "You again." Lin Yuan and the person who drew the sword looked at each other and exclaimed at the same time. The attacker was the fisherman's son who had slashed him a month ago at the invitation of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, and then left. "This flood dragon of yours is quite interesting. The last time we met, you used everything you had and almost lost your life to receive a strike from me. This time, after receiving a sneak attack from me, you managed to receive the formation that you had hastily set up. The speed at which your strength increases is truly terrifying." The fisherman's son's lips curled up slightly. He shook the sword in his hand and chuckled. "It's really too terrifying to make an enemy out of an existence like you. If you don't die, you'll be a thorn in the side of others. No wonder so many people come to me with large amounts of resources, wanting to buy your life." "What? Many people want to buy my life? Then I'm rather curious as to why you're the only assassin here." Lin Yuan's cut flesh began to wriggle and heal. His attribute points were depleted once again, and the golden body secrets that had been knocked down rose again. The fisherman's son lowered his right hand and pointed the tip of his sword to the ground. A strand of golden red blood converged into a drop of blood and fell down. He smiled. "There are indeed many people who want to buy your life. However, out of professional ethics, I can't reveal the employer's information. I can only tell you that most of them didn't come here to put up a bounty for you. They only saw your bounty and casually increased the bounty to a sky-high price in a short period of time." He paused as the smile on his face grew more and more confident. He said in a deep voice, "As for why I'm the only assassin here, can you even ask such a question? In the entire Heaven's Way, which assassin dares to enter the endless sea? It's time for me to monopolize these resources." You said you're from Heaven's Way. Do you know Ling Yunzi?" Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed again as he looked at the fisherman's son with a cold expression. He did not forget that the will of this world had given him a series of missions to enforce Heaven's Way. According to Perfected Person He's confession before his death, the mountain protecting array of Mount Cloud Crane, and the strange method used to restrain the Taotai in the Taoist temple, were all created by Ling Yunzi. However, the will of this world did not acknowledge Ling Yunzi as the person who had set up the evil array. It only wanted him to find Ling Yunzi and obtain more detailed information. So, this Ling Yunzi was actually a cover? The creator and the person who set up the evil array was someone else. He had only taken the title and sold such an evil array to earn money? Oh, the fisherman's son frowned slightly as he asked doubtfully, "So the supreme elder of my sex array Dao Peak is actually so famous? Even a little flood dragon like you who lives in the depths of the endless sea knows his name?" Lin Yuan glanced at the strange town from the corner of his eyes. The fisherman's son then smiled. "That's right. This town was created by Elder Ling Yunzi. In order to prevent you from escaping, I had to fork out my coffin to purchase this array disc. It can be used as a trapping array or a killing array. At critical moments, it can even be used as a Dharma treasure to defend against an opponent's attack with the power of the defense array. TSK. Lin Yuan felt a toothache. The entry level of a Array Dao Master only required one to understand various array patterns and materials. If a traditional Array Dao Master wanted to raise his status and reputation, he would have to set up a true array. The stronger the array, the higher the level of the Array Dao Master. Apart from that, there were two other paths that could not be taken. The first was to modify or simplify the array to a certain extent to increase its effect, increase its power, or simplify the process of setting up the array. This would allow one to set up an array that was not inferior to the original version at a faster speed. The second was to carve an array disk and set up a huge array using various precious materials. Then one would use mystiques to shrink it continuously and turn it into an array disk that could be carried around. One could use it to set up an array at any time, and it was extremely convenient. If one could achieve either of these 2 points, they could be considered as an Array Dao Master. The person that the will of the world wanted him to kill was at least an Array Dao Master. If an Array Dao Master was given enough time to set up an array, even a true god would be at a disadvantage. Those who were weaker might even be sealed in a certain place until they were completely destroyed. Chapter 830. Formation Dao Masters were the easiest to deal with. Before the formation was completed, they had almost no power to fight their enemies. Even if these Formation Dao Masters embarked on the path of cultivation, most of them cultivated neutral and peaceful techniques, or techniques that were specially created to support formations. Very few of them had any means to directly fight their enemies. For this reason, they had sacrificed countless lives before things like formation discs could be researched. At the same time, Formation Dao Masters were also the most difficult to deal with. Their methods were so grand that it was impossible to rely on manpower to complete them. Most of them relied on setting up formations that borrowed the power of heaven and earth. As long as the formation was not destroyed, even if the Formation Dao Master died, the formation would still be able to operate on its own. Some powerful formations did not even need Formation Dao Masters to redraw the formation patterns, or change the objects used to suppress the formation core. They could automatically absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to maintain the operation of the formation. If it was an ordinary Formation Dao Master, Lin Yuan could still try to set up a trap and lure them out of their lair before killing them with thunderous means. However, this kind of existence that could inscribe formation discs was not an existence that could be dealt with by changing the location. As long as they wanted to, after taking out all kinds of formation discs, it would not be a problem to turn the vast starry sky into a great formation that sealed the heavens and the earth. Lin Yuan instantly recalled the reward he had received after completing the first stage of the mission. So these heavenly axioms were all stingy? Bah, the behavior of a scumbag. In terms of difficulty, this mission of enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens was probably not inferior to the mission of dealing with the outer god in the northern frontier. Black Jiao, if you have any last words, say them quickly. The son of the fisherman seemed to have accomplished something incredible, and was suddenly confident of victory. Lin Yuan's gaze turned slightly and landed on the sword in the son of the fisherman's hand. He said in a deep voice, "You have revealed too many flaws. As an assassin, you talk so much nonsense. Isn't it just to stall for time so that your sword can accumulate power, so that you can slash out with an extremely powerful sword? Do you really think you have the chance to slash out with this sword?" From a certain point of view, the sword in the hands of the fisherman was indeed a divine weapon for assassins. It could accumulate sword momentum on its own and multiply the power of the next attack. Had it not been for the fact that it closely resembled the saber-nurturing technique, Lin Yuan would have been wrong about it. Even though it could not be like Lin Yuan's saber-nurturing skill, which could endlessly increase the power of qi and blood, it was probably a sword forge master who wanted to protect his work so that the sword, which he had painstakingly created, would not turn into trash after being unsheathed once. Moreover, the meaning of this sword perfectly fit the profound meaning of the assassin's path. If you don't hit, run 1,000 miles away. To put it bluntly, the might of this strike had already greatly surpassed the strength of the son of the fisherman. In the end, this strike had failed to kill Lin Yuan. As such, the son of the fisherman should have retreated in the face of difficulties instead of continuing to stall for time like a scoundrel, so that he could gather strength for his next strike. If a weapon like this were to fall into the hands of the son of the fisherman, it would be like a pearl covered in dust, right? If you weren't so arrogant the last time we met and were determined to kill me, I really would not have been able to resist at all. But now in my eyes you are no different from an ant. Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed as coldness rippled through his eyes. The invisible ice immediately condensed into icicles, sealing the son of the fisherman within. From afar, it seemed like a crystal coffin had been created for him. The son of the fisherman did not dare to move, as he was surrounded by icicles. If he moved even slightly, he might be killed by the icicles. At the end of the day, he was only at the void realm. It was only because he had a powerful sword that he could kill or heavily injure demon kings in a single strike. The other demons were in awe of him, not daring to clash with him casually. Usually, he only needed to use a single strike to control the situation. As a result, when he met Lin Yuan last time, he had used a single strike as promised, but he never thought that Lin Yuan would actually survive. Afterwards, he directly left and did not use a second strike. It was not because he was arrogant, but because he was afraid that the other demons would see through his weakness. However, when he met someone like Lin Yuan, who had seen through his little tricks and directly exposed him after only meeting him twice, he did not dare to show any temper at all. Tell me, what kind of organization is Heaven's Justice? What kind of person is that Ling Yunzi? Also, tell me about the bounty on my head. If there's even the slightest mistake, I'll take your head. I mean what I say. Lin Yuan swam to the ice coffin and stared at the trapped son of the fisherman. Seeing him open his mouth, Lin Yuan spoke first. There's no need to use the name of Heaven's Justice to scare me. Since I dare to say it, I definitely dare to do it. Compared to the people I have to face, the entire Heaven's Justice can only be ranked in the middle at most. Do you think they'll fight me to the death for a puny void realm cultivator like you? Only when Lin Yuan saw through his thoughts did the son of the fisherman lower his head like he had accepted his fate. His gaze was somewhat bitter. But if I break the rules, will there be a place for me in the world? The son of the fisherman's voice trembled slightly, as if he was undergoing an extremely intense mental struggle. Since Heavenly Justice is a famous organization in the underworld, you won't break the rules even if you don't tell me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have mentioned Heavenly Justice's name from the very beginning. I'm not interrogating you about Heavenly Justice's secrets, and I don't want your Heavenly Justice's martial arts inheritance. I'm just asking you for information about an elder. If you tell me what you know, you'll at most offend that elder, but you won't break the rules. As for those employers who hired you to kill me, I'm never the kind of person who would leave behind a disaster for myself. Those who are my enemies only have two choices. Either they kneel down and work for me, or I kill them all. Those who kneel down only have one chance. Either I die, or their clan is exterminated. Therefore, if they don't have full confidence, they won't do it, and they won't be stupid enough to hire an unknown assassin to do this. Therefore, your employers and those who added the price, I know them better than you do. Lin Yuan's tone was full of ridicule. He lowered his voice and said, So don't tell me whether I break the rules or not. You only have one chance. Either you tell me what I want to know, or I'll see it with my own eyes. If you want to die, I don't mind. The son of the fisherman's face changed. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Lin Yuan in disbelief. He asked in a trembling voice, You. Who are you after all? How could a black Jiao, who lived in the depths of the endless sea and didn't have the background of the dragon palace of the four seas, know so many secrets? Yes. He was in existence that even the dragon palace of the four seas had to hire people to deal with. How could he be simple? Therefore, you're really not suitable to be an assassin. You don't even know the identity of the other party. You just came here as if there's nothing in the world that you can't kill, and there's nothing that you don't dare to kill. Lin Yuan sighed softly. Chapter 831. The fisherman's son was like a frosted eggplant, listlessly spilling everything he knew. The people who hired Heaven's Justice League assassins were indeed at the bottom of the Tao initiation realm among the Heavenly Gate Guardians. And their numbers were not small. The bounty on Heaven's Justice League's head was not a lot, but it was definitely not a small amount. At the very least, it was a third of the resources they had absorbed from the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. Excluding the fact that they could not use all of their resources to buy Lin Yuan's death, they also had to consider the various resources they had consumed. To put it bluntly, there were at least 10 people involved in this bounty, which was almost the total number of Tao initiation realm cultivators in the Xinwu dynasty. However, this was also within expectations. After all, Lin Yuan's attitude was so arrogant before. Even if they were not present, they would not obediently give up on the profits brought by the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, let alone give up the territory where their forces flourished. Therefore, joining forces against Lin Yuan, who they did not know where his confidence came from, was undoubtedly a normal thing. Even those who did not want to fight to the death with Lin Yuan had to make a statement on this matter, lest they suffer a loss. However, these people did not dare to act personally, and only dared to hire a force like Heaven's Justice League. This proved that they were indeed afraid of the demon court behind Lin Yuan. Moreover, they had never thought that Heaven's Justice League, whose upper limit was the Void Realm, would be able to send someone who could really kill Lin Yuan. At this moment, they just wanted to use this matter to warn Lin Yuan. Putting aside these matters, what really interested Lin Yuan was the information about Ling Yunzi. This Grand Elder of Heaven's Justice League's Array Path Peak was said to be a down-and-out Array Path Master in his early years. He spent a lot of effort to become a disciple of Heaven's Justice League, earning money by any means necessary to buy various materials and books to study Array Path. He went into closed-door cultivation 30 years ago, and only officially came out 5 years ago. As soon as he came out, he set up a powerful array that crushed other Array Path Masters, and sat on the position of Grand Elder of Array Path Peak. Even the Sect Master of Heaven's Justice League had to be courteous to him. However, the strange thing was that Ling Yunzi, who had such high attainments in Array Path, had never pointed out anyone's Array Path in front of others. Even if his disciples came to him with questions, he would decline them as much as he could. Only when he met those who were generous would he ask them to leave the question and come back the next day for answers. After all, the profession of Array Path Master burned too much money, much more than ordinary cultivators. For example, spirit stones were a necessary resource for cultivators. However, it was different from the novels in Lin Yuan's previous world. The spirit stones in Tianwu world could store various kinds of energy, but they could not be absorbed or refined. They could only be carried around to increase the speed of gathering spiritual qi. The Array Path Master's spirit gathering array was to place many spirit stones together to set up the array, increasing the speed and quantity of spiritual qi gathering. However, even the most basic spirit gathering array required close to 5,000 spirit stones. Each spirit stone was worth tens of thousands of gold, and there was no market for it. The rest of the arrays also required a lot of spirit stones, and these spirit stones were only the basic materials. Some of the materials used in the arrays were enough to make even god tycoons feel despair. Therefore, Array Path Masters could not teach each other without risking anything. They had to prepare the corresponding materials or spirit stones. Combined with the information given by the will of the world, Lin Yuan quickly connected the dots. This Ling Yunzi probably did not have any talent in Array Path. Even if he had closed himself up for 30 years, he was still at the same level as before. He had just become a disciple of Heaven's Path, so how could he give pointers to other Heaven's Path Masters? If he really had that kind of ability, and coveted the other party's reward, he would not use such a small trick. The only reason he could answer the other party's questions on the spot, and make them come back the next day, was because he could contact the Array Path Master, who could really answer these questions. In the 30 years of closed cultivation, what did he experience, or what did he do? First of all, it could be ruled out that Ling Yunzi was a chess piece supported by some array path master. It was because not all array path masters had bad tempers, but to be able to reach this stage, other than the necessary talent, it was also because they were constantly studying array path. Just like what Edison said, a genius was 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If Ling Yunzi was just a chess piece, the person behind him would not be so easy to talk to. He had single-handedly supported him, and was even able to answer all of Ling Yunzi's questions. He even completely complied with the time Ling Yunzi had promised him. It was as if this array path master had been so bored that his balls hurt, and was just waiting for Ling Yunzi to contact him. There was nothing shameful about array path masters, especially those who could draw array discs. If they were able to develop a powerful array path master, even a true god would be able to face them head-on, or even win. Such an existence was almost at the top of the food chain. Even if they were burdened with heinous crimes, no one would dare to say anything if they showed up openly. It was because the law of the jungle was the main theme of this world. If the other party had such ability, why did he have to support Ling Yunzi to be this camouflage while he hid behind the scenes? Did he have an ulterior motive, or? Interesting. Forget it. What's more important is that I get to work. Anyway, I'll meet him sooner or later. Looking at the Yu family's son who was gradually getting farther and farther away, Lin Yuan lowered his eyes. With a change of mind, Lin Yuan's figure had already moved. As the Yu family's son had already put away the array discs before leaving, they did not have to continue taking detours. After about 7 days, Lin Yuan, who was traveling at full speed, finally arrived at the front line of the battlefield. This was because he had borrowed the other party's transmission formation when he was passing by the sea. Otherwise, he would not have been able to get here in 7 days. This is the place where the battle with the aberrant is taking place? Tai Mu, who was standing beside Lin Yuan, was slightly stunned. He looked at the ramparts made of willow stones in shock, as well as the obscure inscriptions engraved on the ramparts that made him feel inexplicable palpitations. Moreover, after entering the fortress, it was as if he had stepped into a gravitational field. Even if he used all his strength, he could not resist the water. He could only stand on the path of willow stones on the bottom of the sea and stare at the incomparably tall fortress in front of him. The walls of the fortress were full of demonic beasts of various races patrolling back and forth. The overall atmosphere was incomparably heavy. As far as the eye could see, it seemed that there was not even one whispering to each other. Around the fortress, there were teams of knights coming and going like the wind. They were riding huge, swift sea demons. They carried teams of soldiers and patrolled the front line as if to prevent the aberrant from bypassing the defensive line and attacking the rear. Chapter 832. You're Lin Yuan, right? Thank you for your support, but we still have to do official business. Before entering the fortress, you have to do a mental test to make sure that you haven't been contaminated by the aberrations. Only then can we allow you to enter the fortress. Also, every time you leave the fortress and come back, you have to do a mental test. A sea snake demon swam in front of Lin Yuan. As it spoke, it kept flicking its tongue, giving off an extremely impolite feeling. However, Lin Yuan could observe through the eye of the god that every time the sea snake demon opened its mouth, it would inject some transparent poison into the seawater around it to form an invisible net. Once Lin Yuan had the intention to hurt someone, he had to first pass through the net and resist the attack of the other party's poison. Overly cautious? I'm afraid not. The only lesson that history had taught humans was that humans did not learn any lessons from history. If they had really learned it, then they must have suffered repeated beatings and had no choice but to temper this habit into instinct. Just like in Japan in his previous life, there were always people who came to seek revenge and said that they were disturbing. They would draw their swords and kill the other party when they lowered their heads to return the greeting. Then they would have to smile and say that they were rude. Of course, this kind of behavior also allowed Japanese swordsmanship to develop rapidly, giving birth to countless swordsmanship that was suitable for fighting enemies in narrow rooms. There's no need. I'm not entering the fortress. I'm here to clean up the aberrations. Just give me a map of the nearby area. Lin Yuan shook his head. A mental test was indeed a method, but it might not be very effective. In the fortress in front of him, there were probably many aberrations who were still in disguise. From the beginning, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas did not know what they were dealing with. They only thought that the other party had the means to contaminate the minds of living beings and assimilate them into monsters. However, Lin Yuan was very clear that these old rulers were intelligent, and their level of intelligence was definitely not low. After all, the rulers of the old rulers were almost all the most outstanding people of an era. I'm afraid that's not appropriate. The clown sea serpent twisted its body and said in a deep voice, "The aberrant is extremely terrifying. Any action against the aberrant requires the approval of the higher-ups, and then the corresponding personnel will be sent to carry it out. It has happened many times before because the clown sea serpent went to the battlefield without knowing the details of the aberrant. As a result, it caused us huge trouble, so if you don't provoke the mutants, they won't come looking for trouble with you." Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes turned slightly, and he said in a deep voice, "Give me a map of the surrounding area, and I'll do the rest myself. You have no right to tell me what to do, understand?" The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas seemed to be used to being domineering. Even though they could not withstand the attacks of the Great Old Ones, they still put on airs in front of the sea monsters who came to help. They were not even willing to share information, and simply ordered these sea monsters to work for them. However, this kind of bad habit definitely wouldn't work on Lin Yuan. If he wanted to spoil the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, he would not have flipped the table when he came to the Endless Sea. Yes. The sea serpent seemed to still want to refuse Lin Yuan, but it seemed to have received a message from someone. After gritting its teeth, it lowered its head and agreed. Its figure flashed, and a moment later, it took out a gray stone and handed it to Lin Yuan. A strange picture was engraved on the stone. If one looked carefully, one could see that the content was a map of the nearby area, and it was newly drawn. With the fortress as the center, it included the battlefield in front and the safer rear. Some particularly dangerous places were also marked. Obviously, it was the internal map of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. If it were other demon beasts who went out to carry out a mission, they would at most be assigned an old map. Most of the roads might not be able to be traversed, let alone whether the dangerous areas would be specially marked. After glancing at the map and memorizing the general content, Lin Yuan continued to hurry on with Tai Zun, but he was thinking silently in his heart. The cultivation of level 8 of the desolate demon realm was not outstanding in the Endless Sea. After all, a tribe like the brave crab tribe could gather 3 demon kings. If it were forces like the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and the Sea Demon Guild, they would definitely be able to take out a few hundred demon kings. Therefore, the strength of an individual could not affect the situation in this war at all. The opponent was not a mortal or a beast without cultivation. In the remaining 83 days, Lin Yuan would definitely not be able to severely injure the old rulers with his own strength. Unless, it would be best if he could incite chaos and force the old ones to fight to the death with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, and the various sea demon clans that came to support them. Several battles would break out one after another, and it could even lead to a decisive battle. Now the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and the various sea demon clans did not come out, and only dared to fight near the Willowstone Fortress. If he wanted to start a war, he could only hurt the old rulers and force them to take the initiative to find trouble. Moreover, it had to be the kind that would not retreat until the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was taught a big lesson. The first step was to provoke the anger of the old rulers. The second step was to lead this anger to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. The third step was to watch the show from the high platform and wait for an opportunity to complete the mission. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan took a deep breath. The demonic power value on the interface jumped crazily and continuously poured into the eye of the god. The range of detection was also constantly expanding. With himself as the center, he could see the entire battlefield and even the surrounding areas. He began to carefully observe every move of the old rulers. These aberrations could not have no goals and only fight to destroy the world. Even if they were aberrated into monsters, they were still flesh and blood. Since they were flesh and blood, they needed to eat and rest. I have to give them a good beating. Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he muttered in his heart. He quickly brought Tai Mu to a place not far from the fortress, but definitely not close either. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. Most of the areas within the fortress attack range were watched by countless pairs of eyes. However, outside the range of the fortress, even an existence as strong as the ancestral Gragon did not dare to open his perception at will. This was because he might hear or see some ritual of the old rulers, and become uncontrollably aberrated into a monster. Therefore, when he came here, even if those observing him were unwilling, they had to obediently withdraw their gazes. System, is there a way for the people on my side to ignore the spiritual infection of the old rulers? Lin Yuan said in his heart. He had the protection of the system, and could ignore the spiritual infection of the old rulers. After all, no matter how powerful those things were, they could not possibly distort the heavenly axiom into a monster, right? However, Tai Mu obviously did not have such treatment. He had to solve this problem first before the plan could officially be implemented. Chapter 833. Lin Yuan, what do you take me for? Doraemon? The system was speechless. The mission deadline was not up yet, and Lin Yuan had entered the Endless Sea after completing the layout in the south. He had even charged into the battlefield where the sea demons and the Great Old Ones were in a stalemate at the beginning of the mission. In the end, he didn't even have a way to deal with the mental infection of the Great Old Ones? Are you kidding me? I thought you were omnipotent. Lin Yuan rolled his eyes and teased, as if he was not surprised by the system's answer. Then I'll teach you a lesson. Cut off the vision and hearing of the demonic beast beside you. Then throw it directly into the middle of the battlefield. With its strength in the demonic king realm, if it doesn't differentiate between friend and foe, when it dies of exhaustion, it will be able to deal enough damage to the Great Old One. If you find 100 demonic kings, you might be able to complete the mission directly. Lin Yuan. When I sent out a question mark, it wasn't that I had a problem, but that I thought you had a problem. If he could gather 100 demonic kings as a one-time use tool, would he still need to do this kind of mission? Lin Yuan sneered and said, the Great Old Ones are indeed very powerful. They have the ability to distort minds, and even the ancestral dragon can be distorted into a monster. No race can gain any advantage from fighting them head-on. However, the reason why they can be surprised from the long river of history is that their era has passed. Just like those gods who have lost their faith will gradually fade away, when they are completely forgotten or vilified by the world, they will also fade away. At this point, Lin Yuan paused, and there seemed to be a smile in his eyes. Didn't they want to tell the world about the ancient stories? I'll do the opposite. Not only do I want to hear their stories, but I also want to clearly explain why their era has passed and how the new era is better than the old era. I don't believe that doing this won't hurt them. The smile in Lin Yuan's eyes grew wider. The system fell silent. Lin Yuan's train of thought was indeed different. In a world where cultivators and monsters existed, the fist was the only reason. No one would deny that Lin Yuan's series of reforms on the northern frontier were beneficial to the present and would contribute to the future. However, among the 7 great empires, only Lei Qiuxing dared to imitate some of the policies on the northern frontier and implement them. Moreover, they were modified and emasculated versions. Not only would they get half the result with twice the effort, it would also depend on the will of the heavens whether they would be effective in the end. Didn't the emperors of the other dynasties know that these policies would greatly weaken the power of the aristocratic families and sects? Did they not know that these policies would make the country rich while making the people rich? They knew, but they did not dare to do so. This was because these reforms would touch the cake of too many people. Apart from Lei Qiuxing, the founding emperor, no other dynasty with a long history would dare to make such a move. This was because in these countless years, it was not only the imperial family that had accumulated resources. Those aristocratic families and sects could not just sit around and do nothing. If they were angered in the slightest, the entire world would be thrown into chaos. Why did Lei Qiuxing dare to implement the emasculated version of the new laws on the northern frontier? Because he was the founding emperor. Those old aristocratic families and sects, no matter which side they took in the rebellion, would have suffered a great loss. A mere few decades were not enough for them to recuperate and build up strength to their peak state, let alone make any further progress. Why did Lin Yuan dare to implement the new laws on the northern frontier? This was because he had pulled a good tiger skin. The truly powerful factions were afraid of the existence of the demon court and did not dare to fall out with Lin Yuan. As long as they did not touch on their fundamental interests, they could even make concessions again and again. As for those factions that were not strong enough, they were killed by Lin Yuan batch after batch. Only then did they create a northern frontier that, as long as Lin Yuan nodded, all the factions had to obediently cooperate. Even if he was creating a new era, Lin Yuan was built on the foundation of martial strength. However, who would have thought that when the remnants of the old era counterattacked, Lin Yuan would take an unconventional approach and not fight them head-on? Speaking of which, although Lin Yuan's actions would hurt the old rulers, they did not have much practical significance. This was because there were always some existences in the world who knew that they were wrong, but refused to admit their mistakes. Some people could do this for the sake of their reputation, let alone the old rulers who fought for their own survival. Then the meaning of this move was, I want to force them to kill me. Once they gather, the beasts of the endless sea will feel that this is useful. The more the old rulers want to kill me, the more the beasts of the endless sea will want to protect me. In this way, I only need to move my mouth and I can set up a high platform to watch the show and wait for the war to start. Lin Yuan took a deep breath, and the smile in his heterochromatic eyes gradually disappeared. Insidious. If the system had a physical body, it would probably suck in a breath of cold air. Even though it had been born since Pan Gu created the world, it had not evolved its own intelligence for long. Most of the time it was in a muddle-headed state. However, after running around in various worlds to cultivate hosts and coming into contact with all kinds of humans and demons, it could be considered to have extraordinary experience. However, it was the first time it had encountered someone like Lin Yuan. Back in the northern frontier, after a trace of kindness brought about a lot of trouble, it was as if he had become a different person. His thinking and actions had become extremely extreme. His starting point had always been for his own benefit. Even if he knew that his thoughts would cause him to kill, when it was time to make a decision, he would not hesitate at all. Since the northern frontier, he had set up traps and tests time and time again to eliminate the people around him who had different thoughts. After creating a situation where one person's word was law, he only trusted Batu, his loyal subordinate. Although he had left a trump card for the northern frontier, how could he not use it to test whether there were people with hidden ambitions in the northern frontier? When he was in the south, Lin Yuan did not kill many people, but the number of families that he had caused was not small at all. In the future, when the cultivators in the south really defeated the demon sect, it would be the time for the sky demon to go south. At that time, more people would die. However, Lin Yuan did not even blink. He even added fuel to the fire, constantly accelerating the process of the cultivators in the south to destroy the demon sect, as if he was afraid that the sky demon would not be attracted. Now that he had returned to the endless sea, he did not even intend to do anything. He directly provoked a bloody battle between the endless sea's beasts and the old rulers. Using the word terrifying to describe such a person was no longer appropriate. If he wanted to bury the entire martial heaven world for his own goals, then that was a question that didn't even need to be answered. Chapter 834. As a result, countless demonic beasts of the endless sea and the old rulers who were fighting on the battlefield suddenly heard a strange intonation from the other side of the battlefield. It was different from the common language of the sky martial continent. This intonation was even clearer and carried an inexplicable power, as if it was the truth of the world. To be able to comprehend any one of the words, it could be said to be a great fortune for cultivators or demonic beasts. Although the pronunciation and language of the old rulers were also very strange, it was only strange. After listening to it, it would only make people feel uncomfortable. And there was no magic that made people want to study it. If it wasn't for the fact that the old rulers could distort the minds of living beings and continuously inject what they wanted to say into the minds of living beings, any living being that saw them would avoid them like snakes and scorpions. The source of the voice was naturally Lin Yuan. He didn't use the common language of the sky martial world, but the Chinese language of his previous life. Although the forms and pronunciations of many Wuxia languages had changed after the changes of time, it was undeniable that the untainted world had really existed. Those sages and saints who had been immersed in the long river of history had also really existed. Any Chinese character placed in the martial heaven world would cause countless cultivators to try to comprehend it. Some of them might even go berserk. That was because behind each Chinese character was a monstrous literary qi and karmic virtue. It was an important part of civilization. It could even be said that without the appearance of characters, human civilization would have stagnated. Adding on their weak bodies, they would have become food for the various beasts in the great desolate world. There were always some people who said that humans were the favored children of the heavens, and were favored by fate, so they became the main characters of the world. But in reality, that was not the case. It wasn't that humans were favored by fate that they became the masters of the heavens and earth, but that humans relied on themselves to defeat various foreign races, and become the masters of the heavens and earth. In other words, when all the foreign races were defeated by humans, the heavenly Tao could only favor humans. The heavenly Tao was very fair. It would never target anyone, nor would it favor anyone. Even if the son of fate was born, it was just a big show set up by the heavenly Tao. Humans relied on their own efforts to achieve what they had today. If they attributed everything that humans obtained to the love of fate, they would be overestimating the heavenly Tao and fate. Lin Yuan used the language of his previous life to express his views. It was not without the intention of taking advantage of the situation. The demon beasts of the Demon King realm, and above all knew that this language was definitely the most precious treasure they could only dream of. If they could obtain this language from Lin Yuan and study it, their future achievements would be limitless. Sure enough, they're coming for me. Lin Yuan, who was observing the battlefield through the eye of the god, twitched his eyelids slightly, but he still continued to speak. Now the two sides had not really fought yet. The great old ones were only trying to rush in the direction of Lin Yuan. Although they knew that they had to kill Lin Yuan to successfully complete the plan of overturning the new era, they still had not accumulated enough strength. If they lost this ability to assimilate their enemies, they might not be a match for the demon beasts of the Endless Sea. On the other hand, although the demon beasts of the Endless Sea would attack the great old ones, the various sea demon clans and the dragon palaces of the four seas had their own plans in this catastrophe. Just like the chaos calamity, no matter how grand the scene was, it was just for selfish reasons. It was still not enough to start a bloody war. Lin Yuan's thoughts moved slightly, and he felt countless gazes fall on him. He knew that those were the top experts of the Endless Sea, and even the true gods of the Dragon Temple had still come. They knew what Lin Yuan's current actions meant. And they also knew that completely eradicating the great old ones was good for everyone. However, they obviously would not let things develop as Lin Yuan had expected. Simply put, it was still for selfish reasons. Now the situation in the Endless Sea was strange. Although the dragon palaces of the four seas were still strong, in the previous battle with the great old ones, not only did they lose a large number of dragon blood demon beasts loyal to the dragon palaces of the four seas, they even lost a true god. Chapter 835. In addition, due to Lin Yuan's series of obstructions, 8 of the experienced Dragon Nine Sons had died, and the evil dragon camp, which was used as a hidden hand, had completely broken off relations with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, making the already unstable Dragon Palace of the Four Seas even worse. Therefore, This war was very important. If the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could borrow Lin Yuan's strength to severely weaken the various sea demon clans, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would still be able to stabilize its position as the overlord of the Endless Sea after this matter. On the other hand, if the power of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was further depleted, it was really unknown who would be the overlord of the Endless Sea in the end. But the problem was, would everything be fine if they followed the Dragon God Temple's wishes? The Endless Sea stretched for countless miles, giving birth to countless sea demon clans, and also countless ancient gods from the ancient times sleeping here. Their strength might not be as strong as the Dragon God Temple at its peak, but it could not be ignored. If the two sides disagreed, it was inevitable that they would break up. Thinking about the worst, if the sea demon clans were really dissatisfied with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas riding on their heads and took this opportunity to directly rebel, in the end, they might not even be able to eliminate the great old ones. I was too careless. Lin Yuan muttered softly, his face a little ugly. Although most of what happened at this moment was as he had expected, he did not expect that although the great old one was provoked by his ideologies, he was not as furious as he had imagined at the beginning. It seemed that he had other tricks up his sleeve. Therefore, the one being roasted on the fire now was not the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas and the great old ones, but Lin Yuan, the initiator. One had to choose carefully which side to side with, and the concept of neutrality did not exist at all. Could it be? It can't be. Lin Yuan's mind turned, and his momentum weakened a little, because at that moment, he suddenly realized one thing. The reason why the new era replaced the old era must be because the new era was stronger than the old era. Using the simplest example, in terms of combat power, wasn't the people of the Bronze Age much stronger than the people of the Stone Age? The final outcome of the conflict between the Great Old Ones and himself was inevitable, because Lin Yuan had already seen the answer in his previous life. However, the Great Old One didn't act out of desperation. He only put on an act as if he wasn't worried that Lin Yuan would continue. It was as if, although they were surprised, they weren't surprised. In fact, they weren't worried at all. There could only be one reason for this. The Sea Demon Alliance and the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas behind him must have cooperated with the Great Old Ones. As for whether it was one or a few, it was hard to say. Just like the saying in his previous life, where there were people, there was Jianghu. Even if everyone knew that the Great Old Ones didn't come with good intentions and intended to destroy the entire world, this didn't prevent some people from cooperating with the Great Old Ones to clean up the dissidents. Although he didn't know where this confidence that he would be the final winner came from. To put it bluntly, most of the demon beasts behind him were probably colluding with the Great Old Ones, even if the two sides hadn't met face to face. Just like when Jiao Wuying disguised himself as Zhang Xiu and slandered Lei Qiuxing to protect the weak northern frontier at that time. This kind of dark secret was never absent. In his previous life, there were always people who talked about the bad habits of humans, but that was because the only intelligent creatures in his previous life were humans. In this kind of world, the demon beasts that were not inferior to humans in intelligence were not bad when they did this kind of thing. This was the bad habit of all intelligent creatures. In for a penny, in for a pound? Lin Yuan's eyes slightly trembled, and the speed and tone of his speech increased again. The style had changed from a meditation class to a mobilization meeting. The ideas from his previous life were spat out one by one from Lin Yuan's mouth, such as prosperity, democracy, civilization, harmony, freedom, etc. Lin Yuan didn't hold back at all. Between the lines, there was a resonance between heaven and earth, and a warm and inexplicable aura descended from the sky, directly enveloping Lin Yuan. At the same time, the incense power on the system panel jumped crazily. The speed of increase was faster than any of Lin Yuan's previous transactions. This was the power of merit. Educating all living beings was a great merit. Even if Lin Yuan was stirring up the cold rice of his previous life, these advanced ideas didn't exist in the heaven martial world. Through Lin Yuan's description, it was enough to attract a monstrous amount of merit. To Lin Yuan, the most direct benefit was the crazily increasing incense power. Lin Yuan even felt that if he directly converted the incense power into attribute points to improve himself, he might be able to directly step into the Demon King realm and officially condense a divine body. However, an unseen feeling prevented Lin Yuan from having this crazy idea. Indeed, once he condensed a divine body, ignited the divine fire, and forged the divinity, he didn't dare to say that he could directly compete with Hong Jun, but his martial strength would at least reach the peak of the heaven martial world. Hengduan Mountain Range, Endless Sea, 6 great empires, and Heavenly Gate guardians would all come together. But the problem was, what was incense power? It is the foundation of divine power. It is a high-level energy that even existences at the level of Tian Dao and Hongjun have to pay attention to. It is too wasteful to exchange it for attribute points. What's more, Lin Yuan's intuition is frantically reminding him that if he really does this, he will definitely regret it in the future. Gods and mortals seem to only have a difference of one realm, but it could be said that they were two completely different existences. At that realm, would attribute points really be of any use? Shut up. How dare you? Black Jiao. What are you trying to do? Dull thunderous voices exploded in Lin Yuan's sea of consciousness, almost crushing Lin Yuan's mind and stirring his brain into a paste. If that was the case, Lin Yuan would still be able to regain consciousness, but he would also become a muddle-headed idiot. From this, it could be seen how disgusted these big shots who were watching the battle behind the scenes were with Lin Yuan's behavior of wanting to start a bloody battle at all costs. The corners of his mouth, nostrils, and eyes were constantly flowing with golden red blood. Lin Yuan was almost clenching his teeth tightly as he continued to spit out word by word. He had no intention of stopping because of these big shots' anger. At the same time, the old rulers finally panicked. This was because they realized that things weren't as they had expected. The existence that had borrowed the power of the new era to fight with them, the remnants of the old era, didn't stop. Instead, it became even more intense, as if it wanted to use this opportunity to completely reduce them to worthless. Thus, the aberrations at the front line went crazy. They twisted their strange, twisted bodies and rushed toward the area where Lin Yuan was. Chapter 836. The number of ancestral demon realm experts that rushed out of Willowstone Fortress was extremely large, but none of them had truly stepped into the threshold of true God. The few Dragon God Temple experts that had officially stepped into the divine path and started to manage the Four Seas God system did not move. They seemed to be observing and did not care if Lin Yuan would continue this battle of ideals. They also seemed to be secretly afraid of something. However, although these Dragon God Temple experts did not jump out to oppose Lin Yuan, they did not express their stance. In fact, they had already expressed their stance. No matter what, Lin Yuan was still a dragon bloodline demon beast. Even if he did not have a good relationship with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, bloodline was a threshold that could not be crossed. Even if the demon beasts could see that Lin Yuan would have great achievements in the Endless Sea in the future, they did not dare to rope in Lin Yuan, because no one could be sure that Lin Yuan would not become the Dragon King of a certain Dragon Palace in the blink of an eye. At this time, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had a bloodline connection with Lin Yuan. At the same time, they had a blood debt with the Great Old Ones. However, no one came out to stop the ancestral demon beasts of the other races. In a sense, they had once again chosen to stand opposite Lin Yuan. So this is the difficulty of my task. Lin Yuan's gaze was cold as he swept across the ancestral demon beasts that were rushing towards him. He originally thought that it would be very difficult to fight against the Great Old Ones. However, in a flash of inspiration, he used the battle of ideals to confront them. This was equivalent to directly crippling the Great Old One's most powerful means. If he let them fight openly with the Endless Sea's demon beasts, the Endless Sea's demon beasts would definitely have the upper hand. After solving a seemingly difficult yet very simple problem, the real problem appeared in front of Lin Yuan. How should he deal with these ancestral demon beasts? Although Lin Yuan had always been able to fight above his level, there was a difference between gods and mortals. These ancestral demon beasts were already considered demigods. If they accumulated enough Joss flames, it would not be surprising that they could use some god's means. Not to mention that Lin Yuan was promoted by the system, and his attribute points were just a standard model. Even if he maxed out his attribute points and entered the blood boil state, he would not be a match for an ancestral demon beast. Kid, I told you to shut up. Didn't you hear me? An extremely ruthless voice sounded. Then, a demon beast with silvery white fur like an ape with a pair of horns on its head. It pushed the ancestral demon beasts in front of it, pushed several ancestral demon beasts in front of it, and strode into Lin Yuan's line of ancestral demon beasts. As Lin Yuan looked, he saw that this ape demon beast had a flat nose and a protruding forehead. The fur on its neck was not silvery white, but azure. Lin Yuan's eyes could not help but tremble slightly. Although this demon beast did not introduce itself, its background was probably not simple since it dared to be so arrogant in front of a group of ancestral demon beasts. Moreover, although its appearance was somewhat different from a certain mythical creature in Lin Yuan's memory, some of its characteristics were also abnormally obvious. This fellow probably had the bloodline of Wuxia, one of the 4 great spiritual monkeys in the myths of his previous life, the red-bone horse ape. It was the bloodline of a demon beast on par with the great sage, heaven's equal, who had left a shadow in the hearts of countless people. Moreover, the red-bone horse ape was undoubtedly the best at controlling water among the 4 great spiritual monkeys. Back when Yu the Great governed the Huai River, there was a rebellion by Wuxia. Even Yu the Great was helpless against it. In the end, it was only with the help of Yinglong that Wuxia was captured. However, capturing it was not the end of it. Unable to solve the problem of the Huai River, Yu the Great used an iron chain to lock its neck, and pierced its nose with a golden bell to suppress it under Tortoise Mountain. Only then was the flood resolved. A water demon that even Yu the Great had to borrow the strength of the dragon clan to deal with. From the looks of it, at least half of this fellow's bloodline belonged to Wuxia. Even Lin Yuan could not help but feel that it was a little tricky. After all, he was only a water flood dragon. Compared to the dragon clan in this world, it might be a great bloodline. However, compared to the Yinglong in the untainted world, it was still far from being at the level of Yinglong. Seeing that Lin Yuan did not stop, the demon beast that resembled Wuxia was furious. It stretched out a claw to grab Lin Yuan. This claw showed a pure golden luster. It grew with the wind, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. When it came to Lin Yuan, this claw had already crossed a distance of hundreds of feet. In front of this claw, Lin Yuan was as small as an earthworm. Lin Yuan's scalp tingled, but he still recited the classics from his previous life. His eyes were fixed on the golden claw that could fall at any time. Even though among the 4 great spiritual monkeys, only the long-armed ape monkey was good at strength, it was not difficult to see that although the 4 great spiritual monkeys had their own strengths, it was only their talents. In terms of strength, there was not much difference. Although there was a difference between being hit by Wuxia and being hit by the long-armed ape monkey, the difference was not big. This was because this punch could kill. The dragon clan of the 4 seas was still not attacking? Lin Yuan's eyes turned cold. He looked in the direction of the Willowstone Fortress, his eyes somewhat sinister. Although the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas had made their stance clear, they did not shed all pretense of cordiality. In this situation where the whole world was against Lin Yuan, if they stood out to take the blame for Lin Yuan, they would definitely be able to gain a good impression of Lin Yuan. In the coming war, it was not impossible to persuade Lin Yuan to push the war in the direction of the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. Lin Yuan originally thought that the Dragon Clan of the 4 Seas had this plan in mind. He did not expect that in the end, he had overestimated the Dragon Clan of the 4 Seas. To describe them as short-sighted would not be an insult to them at all. These guys did not make a move only because they were afraid of the Demon Court, or the Guardian who had shown his power in the Dragon Palace of the West Sea might protect Lin Yuan. Therefore, they did not want to directly become enemies with Lin Yuan. They made a mistake in information, deceiving the ancestors of the other clans to rush out to find trouble with Lin Yuan. They wanted to see if Lin Yuan still had any trump cards that he had not revealed. If Lin Yuan did not have any trump cards, then it would be best to let Lin Yuan die here. After all, Lin Yuan had gradually revealed his strength in the Endless Sea. Although the other sea demon clans did not know, the Dragon Palace knew very well that Lin Yuan had already rejected their invitation. It was destined that he would not be on the same boat as them. Therefore, it was not a bad thing to eliminate Lin Yuan as soon as possible. As for how to deal with the Great Old Ones, then it was not up to Lin Yuan, the corpse, to worry. Get lost. Lin Yuan growled, and the power of incense on the interface began to slide down. A 30,000-foot-long black dragon phantom appeared and collided with the golden claw. Boom! The black dragon phantom exploded, and the golden claw was lifted up. Chapter 837. Divine Power? He's just in the desolate demon realm. How can he use divine power? Some of the demon ancestors who were watching the battle were startled, their faces full of disbelief. There were also some ancestral demon ancestors whose faces were filled with greed. They said viciously, "It seems that other than that self-contained language, this kid has quite a lot of good stuff on him. Capture him and interrogate him properly. Perhaps we can take another step forward." That's a good idea. Aren't you afraid of being used as a tool? There were also some ancestral demons who understood what was going on who spoke out. As they finished speaking, more and more demon ancestors came to their senses. Black Jiao had a lot of secrets and each of them was related to a great opportunity. For example, didn't the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas summon Lin Yuan for Lin Yuan to purify his own bloodline and transform from a snake into a flood dragon? For other demonic beasts, this method of purifying dragon blood was not important. After all, they did not have the bloodline of the Dragon Clan. However, this method was of the utmost importance to the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Although the Dragon Clan's bloodline was getting weaker and weaker, everyone could see that they used to dominate the Endless Sea with the advantage of their bloodline. Now that their bloodline was getting weaker and weaker, their position as the overlord was shaken. If they could get Lin Yuan's method of purifying their bloodline, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could still be the overlord of the Endless Sea. For the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, Lin Yuan's other secrets were not as tempting as the method of purifying their bloodline. But what was the result? Lin Yuan did not hand over the method of purifying his bloodline. It seemed that he was unwilling to cooperate with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Not long after he entered the Dragon Palace of the West Sea, he was locked in the Evil Dragon Pond. Not long after that, the Evil Dragon Pond was destroyed. When Lin Yuan reappeared, he lost 8 of his 9 sons and the last bit of loyalty the Evil Dragon Camp had to the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Now, even the spies in the Evil Dragon Camp were found out by Ao Sifin and eliminated in the most cruel way. If it were them, they would not be able to swallow it. Then, why did the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, which was more domineering than them, swallow it? This Black Jiao was not only hiding a huge secret and a huge opportunity, but also a terrifying existence. An existence that even the Dragon God Temple was unwilling to face. Was it really something that the demon beasts could deal with? Thinking of this, other than the demonic beast that looked like Wuxia, the other demonic ancestors that had rushed out in an aggressive manner all silently retreated to one side, waiting for the outcome of this battle to be decided. They wanted to see if they should retreat or drink a mouthful of meat soup. However, there were also some timid or cautious demonic ancestors that did not even have the courage to continue staying here. After confirming that this place was difficult to deal with, they actually quietly retreated towards the Willowstone Fortress. Even the demonic beast that looked like Wuxia had an ugly expression on its face, as if it had just eaten a fly. Although it was a little hot-tempered, it was not a complete brute. At this point, it could naturally see that they had all been used by the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. What this little Black Jiao represented was far more terrifying than what it had shown. But now that things had come to this, could it still retreat? As everyone knew, divine power was a one-time consumable. Unlike Gangqi and demonic power that could be recovered by themselves, this kind of power could be said to be the key to truly taking that step. Even they had to cherish it, and would not use it unless it was absolutely necessary. And Lin Yuan's move just now had probably used up a lot of divine power. It was likely that he already bore a grudge against it. Countless eyes, both overt and covert, fell on him. Lin Yuan's lips curled into a sinister smile. Then he said meaningfully, "You have been testing me step by step. Isn't it because you want to see how my foundation is? Isn't it because you want to know if there is a guardian of the demon court behind me? Isn't it because you want to eat the secrets on me?" A series of questions were thrown out. Other than a few confused ancestral demons, the faces of the dragon god temple darkened. In a corner of the continent, a few true gods who were observing Lin Yuan through magic treasures also looked gloomy and looked at each other. Although they had indeed done some dishonorable things, no one had made the conflict clear. If Lin Yuan acted like this, how could he get along with others in the future? Was he going to fight against the guardian of the heavenly gate and the demons of the endless sea? The two top systems of the cultivation world with his own strength? Let me tell you today. Wuxia the ancient demon court. Perhaps it has already disappeared in the long river of history. Even if there are remnants, who knows where they are now hiding and struggling at death's door. This king said that he was the reincarnation of the ancient demon emperor, but he just had too many secrets on him. He pulled out a tiger's skin to scare you. I didn't expect that there would really be fools who would believe him, and there are so many fools. Lin Yuan shook his head and continued speaking slowly. As his voice fell, he did not know how many people were angry. No background? If not, you should have said so earlier. Would we have allowed you to live until today? However, who said that only the ancient demon court can scare you? Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly, and the power of incense on the panel kept jumping. At the same time, a pitch-black crack appeared beside him. Two pale palms slowly reached out and grabbed the black crack. Then, with a heavy tear, the black crack was directly torn into a large black light curtain. It was like an incomparably strong space barrier. In his eyes, it was just a laughable joke. After a while, a young man in a white coat slowly walked out of the light curtain. His face was so pale that it was almost bloodless, and his hair was messy like a chicken's nest. He looked like he had not had a good rest for several days, and could suddenly die at any time. However, the field was silent. All the demons stared blankly at the pale young man who had crossed the realm. They were actually unable to sense the cultivation base of the other party. They could only sense the astonishing power that was constantly rising. It was as if the other party could destroy this world with a single thought. What kind of expert was this? A human transcending stage expert, an ancient god among demons. Was he really a match for this pale young man? Ha! The pale young man stretched out his hand and yawned. His gaze swept across the faces of the ancestor demons. With a mocking gaze he muttered, "It's a pity that this world can't allow my true body to descend. Otherwise, I could have obtained a batch of good experimental subjects." At this point, he turned to look at Lin Yuan and said doubtfully, "You are only at the 4th realm, but you can fork out 3 million incense sticks. You are really generous. Amazing, amazing. Among the colleagues I know, you should be the youngest and most promising one." Chapter 838. Get to work. Lin Yuan's forehead was full of black lines, and he angrily roared in a low voice. The 3 million incense power was converted from his merit of spreading the Chinese language in this world. However, Lin Yuan only spread it, he did not create it. The majority of the merit given by the will of the world belonged to Cangjia, and Lin Yuan only ate a small part. If he could spread the language, every time someone studied it, Lin Yuan would be able to get a small amount of merit power. However, the 3 million incense power was not even warm, and he was forced to spend it, which inevitably made Lin Yuan extremely unhappy. Powerful hosts could help each other, but hosts who could activate this function had to have accumulated at least 1 million Joss flames in their hands, which meant that they had already reached the later stage of development. This function allowed hosts to communicate with each other, and it could be considered as a practice for the final battle that could come at any time. Lin Yuan should be the only host who had activated this function before reaching the later stage of development. After all, the merit of creating and spreading the language was too great. If he could convert it into his own strength, he would naturally gain more than lose. But now, after working so hard, he actually ended up as a worker? Moreover, the 3 million incense power in exchange for a host who was willing to help and was really free to descend for 3 minutes. In addition, this world was originally not complete and could only barely accommodate a true god. If he wanted to go further, he had to wait for the world to be complete, or leave the sky martial world to cross the sea of bitterness, and go to a world that could bear more power. 3 million incense power in exchange for 3 minutes of someone else's clone. This trade was a loss to his grandmother's home. However, this guy was not in a hurry to make a move after coming down, and instead wanted to chat with Lin Yuan. It was obvious that he wanted to work but did not put in effort. Kill who? The white coat was slightly startled, and slowly spread out his hands, and said with a bitter smile, "You asked me to be a fighter, but you should at least give me a target, so I know who to hit, right?" Lin Yuan pulled Tai Ma to his side, and said expressionlessly, "It's up to you. Except for me and this crab, you can kill anyone." The man in the white coat licked his lips and disappeared in a flash. When he reappeared, he was holding a head that was still dripping blood. The group of ancestral demon experts looked at each other. Soon after, they simultaneously looked towards the demonic beast that resembled Wuxia. However, they discovered that although its enormous body was still standing on the spot, the head on its neck had already disappeared. Not only had the green fur on its neck been dyed red with blood, even its severed neck was badly mutilated. This kind of injury was obviously not caused by a sharp weapon. In other words, in the blink of an eye, an ancestral demon with a powerful bloodline was beheaded with bare hands? What the hell? Why, just who was the demonic beast here? The ancestral demon ancestors who had gathered their courage and stayed behind were all shocked and furious. However, none of them dared to stand out and face the white-robed man head-on, fearing that they would be the next unlucky one to have their head chopped off. The speed of the ancestral demon ancestors was very fast, at least 3 times faster than when they came here. Lin Yuan even suspected that if they had burst out with such speed from the beginning, he might not have been able to spend 3 million incense power to summon his colleagues. Unfortunately, no matter how swift their speed was, it was completely meaningless before this man in white coat who was swift like a ghost and extremely ruthless in his attacks. Every single breath of time, 1 to 3 ancestral demon realm experts would be beheaded, torn apart, and crushed. These ancestral demon ancestors who ran rampant in the endless sea, and could even wrestle with the dragon palace of the 4 seas when they joined forces, were rapidly losing members under the white-robed man's pursuit. In fact, because their speed was too fast, they quickly caught up with some demonic beasts who wanted to sneak back to the Willowstone region. These demonic beasts who had sensed that something was wrong at the beginning and wanted to sneak away were unable to escape in the end. They also joined the group that was being pursued. This is an ancestral dragon who was guarding the Willowstone fortress felt that his breathing had stopped. One person was chasing a group of ancestral demon ancestors and massacring them. Was this reasonable? This was not reasonable. However, this scene was indeed happening in front of him. Although there were many ancestral demon ancestors who had gathered in the Willowstone fortress, this was the accumulation of demonic beasts who had reproduced in the endless sea for countless years. If not for this, even if the endless sea had a geographical advantage, it would not necessarily have an easier time than the Hengduan mountain range. Although the various forces did not get along well with one another, and their hatred was even greater than the other, they had a tacit understanding to only let the younger generation fight. They never dared to involve existences above the Demon King realm. Only when the guardians of the heavenly gates came knocking, or when the old dominators appeared, which was enough to shake the foundations of the entire endless sea, would these ancestral demons and ancient gods appear one after another to deal with the troubles that the younger generation could not resolve. Every time the person that Lin Yuan summoned attacked, not only did he kill ancestral demon experts, but he also killed the foundation of the entire endless sea. Although the dragon palace of the 4 seas position as the overlord of the endless sea was stabilized, It was disadvantageous for the overall situation. A few people from the Dragon Temple wanted to stop him, but after silently looking at each other, no one said anything. Apart from the 4 ancestral dragons, the other 2 dragon gods of the Dragon God Temple were just putting it nicely, but in essence, they were only at the ancestral demon realm. Moreover, even the 4 ancestral dragons had never really stepped through that door. Just like the transcendents among the guardians of the heavenly gate, they were only separated from the ancestral demon realm and the sovereign realm by a large realm. They were stronger and had a longer lifespan, but they were not real gods. If their faith was broken, they would not be far from death. In essence, they were more similar to the protector Een god that the human empires worshipped with the fate of the nation. This was not their problem, but this world was not complete to begin with. Reaching the threshold of the true God was already the limit. If they wanted to improve further, they could only leave this world, or find a way to make this world complete. However, although they were strong, the difference in their realms was not big. The man in the white coat could kill those ancestral demons like chopping melons and vegetables. If it were them, they might not be able to withstand the second move. Even until now, they did not understand how the man in the white coat attacked. Those ancestral demons did not seem to have the slightest intention to resist. They just kept running and were one-sidedly killed. Without fighting, they naturally could not see the depth of the man in the white coat. Someone is spying on us? Just as the killing was going on, the man in the white coat suddenly raised his head and looked at the sea above. Immediately, he stretched out his right hand and gently pointed. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.